Hello and welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast. So this is our very first podcast. My name is Chris and with me is my good friend...
Clem?
Yay! Perfect. We're off. We're doing it. So we would like to talk to you and just share our love about all things Mantic, Mantic games, the community, the company and the fun times that we have. Here today, this is our very first episode and I think that will come across very clearly. We're going to talk about Mantic Sci-fi, so all the latest in Firefight, 2nd edition, all very exciting. We're going to talk about Deadzone, the new global campaign, and we're going to talk about some Kings of War and, if there's time, Vanguard and the other Mantic games as well. So, Clem, we are making a Mantic podcast. So probably to start with, and it's our first episode, we should probably talk a little bit about who we are in very light terms. So, Clem, who are you, if that's not too metaphysical?
Well, to keep it short, I'm in my late 30s and I'm currently living in Berlin, Germany, but I was not born there. And I think that's a good start. What about you, Chris?
I'm called Chris, but we've covered that, and I am from the UK originally, but I live just outside of Frankfurt, so we are two foreigners, two Auslanders living in Germany, and we both love Mantic games, that's fair to say. And I like to think of myself as being in my mid-30s, because I've got about 6 months left of being in my 30s. So I think maybe in about 3 or 4 months I'll have to start saying I'm in my late 30s, but I very much consider myself to be in my mid-30s. So, Clem, what is your background in gaming and what sort of, very briefly, brought you along to Mantic games and why do we find Mantic games so great?
Well, I mean, I have, I think, a very typical background in gaming. I used to do role-play game and Warhammer Fantasy Battle as a teenager with friends and cousins. A big memory for me is I got the Necromunda box set on release day in 1995. I loved it. I had so many fun games with it and great memories.
Did that feel historic at the time? Because looking back now, that seems like quite a historic day. It's certainly for nerds, at least.
I mean, I remember it blowing my mind, like the content of the starter. I didn't have that much experience with gaming at the time, but the campaign system and the overall rules were really, really nice. And I really have fond memories of this. And then, I sold and gave away most of my minis when I went to college, the usual thing. And then quite a while later, in 2016, I was homesick for a few weeks. And I read a book called Silo. And it basically reminded me of Necromunda, which was basically, super fond memories from my teenage days. And I thought, do these things still exist? And I looked into it, and so that was before the release of the newer edition of Necromunda, but I found an online community, like Yak Tribe, and basically got back into the hobby quite deep back then, all over again. So I was looking around at Warhammer Fantasy also at that time, and the end times already happened, I believe. And I came across Kings of War, but obviously I didn't know anyone who was playing it. And so I tried a few test games with cardboards, like half-scale cardboard. Also played with my now wife. And thought it was a really, really smart system. And really gave me the impression, okay, that's what fantasy battles should have been all along. And that was about it. And it took me a bit longer to find actual people to play with miniatures and so on. But so pretty much right as I got back into the hobby, I was confronted with 2nd edition Kings of War, like the free rules, and I bought the rule sets right after.
And when I was around about 11, I used to paint the occasional model. I remember having some Space Marines, some Orcs, but it was like I just had a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I remember I must have had some squats at some point, but they've been cleared out sadly. But then I stopped doing that when I became a teenager, as you do. And it was probably mid-30s that I had a crack at 40k because I had some friends that played it. Didn't care for that for various reasons. Tried AOS, again, didn't quite stick. I tried Malifaux, I tried Guild Ball. So I jumped around an awful lot, and then it was just giving Kings of War a go when edition dropped. And that felt like it was a bit like when I heard the Pixies for the first time. It was the game I wished I'd been playing all along, if that makes sense. And ever since then, obviously, I branched out into other Mantic things, as I do, Clem, as you well know. And very, very happy to be here. So, Clem, why are we doing a podcast, specifically the Mantic Universe podcast?
Well, for me, it's I think the main goal is to share the love, basically, and deep dive into Mantic stuff that we both love. And it's also a cool experimentation, right? Like creating content about the stuff that we both enjoy so much. And on a personal side, I also like having hobby podcasts while I'm doing hobbying myself. I think they're great background noise when I'm hobbying. And so, I don't know, maybe you, dear listener, are doing some hobby at the moment, and we're glad to be along your side while you do this. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, very much the same. It's a combination of, I really love Mantic, the community around it is fantastic, but it is just, to me, mainly it's just an excuse to talk to my good friend about stuff we love. We're really positive toward Mantic, and I think what we both want is this podcast to be positive and express how much we like Mantic, rather than beating any other company, or not Sega versus Nintendo in 1992 or whatever. And just be a positive force in the world in our own very little way. Clem, what games do you play at the moment?
So obviously Kings of War. I think that's probably my favorite game these days. So I play both with actual miniatures and online on Universal Battle 2. And then kind of recently I started to play one-page rule Grimdark Future, which I quite like. It's a relatively shallow system in a way, but it's simple enough that I can just get back to it without having my brains melt down, which is always nice. And it lets me put my 40k miniatures on the table, basically. Have several 40k armies, mostly from the hobbying perspective. Like, I like collecting the miniatures and painting them. But I don't really enjoy the 40k rules themselves. And so it's a bit sad to have the miniatures and never play any games with them. So Grimdark Future is good for that. And then, surprisingly, I play Necromunda sometimes as well. We've had a campaign running here on and off in Berlin for the past few years. We're about to restart the campaign now with the Hash Waste stuff. I played quite a bunch of Vanguard, so the fantasy skirmish game of Mantic. Although at the moment our gaming group is not focused on this game so much. And and next I'm getting ready for Firefight. And we'll talk about that a bit later, I think. But I'm super excited about Firefight. I'm also, I think, quite a gaming butterfly. Like, I love reading about new game systems, checking the rules, checking the miniature ranges, and so on. And so, in the recent past, and still today, I've been interested in War Master. I'm painting a War Master army at the moment. Armada as well, painting a fleet. I also like Gaslands, Warcry, Bolt Action, also OPR, Age of Fantasy. So lots of systems. What about you, Chris?
I started playing Kings of War. As I said earlier, I tried a few different games, but I did like aspects of them, but they didn't grab me as I really wanted to be grabbed, so to speak. And then 3rd edition Kings of War dropped, and to me that seemed like all of a sudden Kings of War went from being sort of novelty I'd heard about to something that genuinely seemed really exciting. Immediately I dropped Northern Alliance Army, which is a new army at the time, and since then, you know me, I went absolutely nuts doing lots and lots of different armies. I don't even know how many armies I've got down in the basement now, but one thing I really want to do is go back and improve a lot, because I had this sort of manic drive to get stuff done. We'll talk about it later, but that's something I want to sort of look at, actually. And once I started playing Mantic games, they were just so good. I've gone quite deep in The Walking Dead, Deadzone. Again, I hadn't played that, but got the starter set, loved it, absolutely loved it. And since then, I've just gone absolutely bonkers on that. And of course, that leads us beautifully in for Firefight. So everything has sort of dovetailed really, really nicely in terms of me just buying loads of Mantic stuff and enjoying it. So that's where I am. I've got all, Star Saga. I haven't actually played a game of it, I must confess. I've got the minis painted up and I've got it all ready to go. There's just so many wonderful games that Mantic makes that things take a back seat. I did get the rules for Vanguard. I did read through them. I got the new, I think they had a half price sale at one point, didn't they, for the new updated rule book. So I grabbed one of those when it was on. I'm sure I'm going to play it at some point. But I absolutely love Kings of War and I absolutely love Deadzone. They're definitely my two favourite games. I haven't played a game of Firefight yet, but I'm ready for it and I've got it scheduled for the end of the month. So that leads us nicely on, Clem, to what is it exactly about Mantic games and the community and everything sort of that is Mantic that we enjoy so much?
Well, the first thing that got me into it is their amazingly good rules. I mean, you said earlier we don't want to give a bad name to other companies, but when you compare the kind of rules that they can produce and what you find out there, I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I have to say the bolt action rule set is also pretty good. Like, I was also surprised when I read it first, like, oh, that's actually a very solid rule book. I understand what's going on, and when you play the game, you're not always looking through the book trying to figure out what's going on, and you can very quickly just focus on the game and have a good time, or have a bit more of a tactical challenge if you're playing a bit more competitively.
And who doesn't love the dice bag, right? That is one of the best mechanics in games to me. They're just that having the activations come out of a dice bag.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart thing, but also overall just things flow naturally, and so Mantic is really good at doing that. I think they hit the perfect balance between deep enough rules that it's never boring and there's always something interesting to do with them, and simple enough, like it's not Infinity, right? Like I tried Infinity, but just there's a lot of complexity there, but I just couldn't see why. Like it doesn't bring any value to me as a gamer that the book is so thick in a way. And so I think Mantic really is perfect in the balance between simplicity and complexity, like depth of the system. And then on the community and the company itself, I think what I really enjoy about Mantic is I get the overall feeling that Mantic values my experience as a gamer rather than tries to make the most out of me as a customer. And I think I really appreciate that, and I'm happy to support them financially with buying rules, obviously, but also buying miniatures, even if they're accepting miniatures from other manufacturers. I'm also happy to have Mantic armies. I mean, it's kind of foreshadowing for our proxy topic later, right?
Which I'm pretty sure I forgot to mention at the top of the show. Yes, our topic for the day is talking about proxies in games, yes.
I think you did mention it, but anyway. So yeah, what I like about Mantic is they really give an impression that they are a gamers company, if that makes sense. It's not just a gaming company; it's a gamers company as well. And I'm happy to be part of the group and part of their customers.
One of the main things there is it doesn't have shareholders. And how many other games companies do you hear stories about the owner getting drunk and stealing somebody's hat? These things are very endearing to me. Yeah, everything. We're not saying anything revolutionary new here, but it's all super, super true, isn't it? The fact that there's a rules committee who are, the good players, and I don't consider myself a very good player, but it's the people that really understand the game from a player's perspective, and the fact that they publish one book or two books at the same time, where there's no possible temptation to have the latest models have slightly better rules than anything else. So you're staying out of that sort of endless arms race of other game systems, without mentioning Voldemort. So I think all those things, and I think it's quite, people are humble in the Mantic world, and they're just nice, really, really, really nice people. So it's all in all, it's just a really, really nice place to be. Okay, Clem, so that brings us on to our next section, which is Mantic News. So every month we're going to have a quick look at the latest releases, any announcements, any rumours. I don't think either of us are massively well connected, but it's always good to talk about the new stuff. Clem, has anything that's coming out recently or has been rumoured to be released, has anything caught your eye?
I'm obviously looking at the Plague stuff from Firefight. Not exactly buying all of it, but pretty much buying all of it. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, there's some lovely looking resin models there. I actually really like the Plague line anyway, particularly the hard plastic stuff. I think it's really, really nice. But obviously, building on that with some really detailed and beautiful resins, and Mantic resins I always find are really, really good. That's beautiful. There's some really dynamic poses there, so that's got to be a good thing. And I think some of them are kind of alternative sculpts for existing models, but they're really, really nice. And I always, you know me, I always like to have the options. So, I would definitely be jumping in on that. I'm pretty excited. I mean, obviously, there's been a load of new Firefly. There's been a load of new Firefight releases, which look super, super cool. There's the hard plastic Marauders, which are really nice. I'm building those up at the moment. I really like the Ripper suits. I think they're not hard plastic, and they're fairly static poses, but they're very cool models. So I'm working on that at the moment. I think there's been a fair amount of new Armada stuff. So there's been the Salamander fleet has been released a little while ago. There is the rumoured, I think I've seen some shots of the Varangur fleets, which look very cool, as you might expect. It's kind of Viking pirate types, Viking raider ships look really, really cool. So that's all very exciting. Yeah. What have we forgotten? Oh, and of course there's the Stormforged Orcs for Kings of War, and quite a lot of new Halfling releases, which I imagine have been really, really successful for Kings of War and for Mantic. And you see a lot of Halfling armies, and that's all for the good, obviously. And I really like actually how the new Marauders stuff is being sold at the same time as the Firefight / Deadzone Marauders, because obviously they're both plays on orcs, so the possibilities for kit bashes while keeping buying Mantic products is really, really, really good. And some of the sculpts are really nice for both games. Definitely. And that's definitely something that's really good for Deadzone and Firefight, is I think everything has actually been officially released by Mantic. I think everything has got models. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's true.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And I think, so for the Halflings and Riftforged Orcs is the second wave of models. So I don't know if there are still some models that will be released in the near future for those factions. But it's a nice complement to the existing range already. And I like that Mantic is fleshing out the ranges. Basically, releasing everything you need to play an army. I think for the most, yes, like there might be an odd reference here or there that's still lacking a model, but
that is pretty cool. Next, we're going to talk about the coming up. I think it's the end of this month is the Germany GT, and unfortunately, due to the situation in the world at the moment, it's been moved from its usual spot in Cologne to Hamburg, which is obviously quite a long way away from Cologne, but at least it is still going ahead. I think you're still planning on attending, right? And you've got a few friends coming along with you.
Yes, I mean, going to Hamburg from Berlin is much closer than going to Köln. And I was going to Köln anyway, so yes, I'm still going to Hamburg, and I managed to convince at least one person from Berlin to come along, and there's a third guy who might also join, but he's not sure yet, so we'll see. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the idea of a 2 days tournament. It's also super friendly, and so it's mostly playing the game I like for 2 days straight, so what's not to like?
Right. Yeah, I'm really sad about it. I was due to go, now it's moved to Hamburg. I had quite a lot of travelling recently, and got two young kids. It just feels, at the moment, a little bit too much, but I'm sad not to be going there and to be, potentially playing you, buddy. But it is, a really, really nice community in Germany. And last year we had guys over from France, and they were so nice. And one of the French guys, Alex, beat me on the last dice roll, and his smile. My naiads had to kill something on an objective, and they didn't. I think we had to get something like 6 wounds through to win the game, and we got 3 wounds through. And his smile, and he just said, he had just had the award-winning smile, and he just said, "Oh, my friend, thank you for this lovely present you've given me." And it was just a beautiful moment that somehow actually took the sting out of the massive disappointment of not winning the game on the last dice roll. But those guys, they're really good players and just really, really nice people. So I hope they make it again. I think there was some mention they were planning on it. Yeah, the community in Germany, they're really nice guys. So I'd recommend anyone listening who's on the fence, I would really recommend going, even as I say that and I'm not going. So that takes us on to talking about Mantic Sci-fi. So the way we've split up the podcast, we've gone about this and back and forth on this many, many times. The way we've decided to do this is just to keep it really simple. So we want to talk about Mantic Sci-fi first, and then we'll move on to talking about fantasy stuff afterwards. And obviously under those headers comes, all the different games associated with them. So, Mantic Sci-fi. Clem, why are we so excited about Firefight, 2nd edition?
Well, I think first we should, for whoever doesn't know what Firefight is, should give a brief introduction, right? So Firefight is the squad level sci-fi war game of Mantic. So it's in the Warpath universe. And so each army has about maybe 10 or 12 units. And each unit is maybe 5 to 10, 20 models maybe. And you have a couple vehicles and maybe big heroes, like big monsters for play, for example. So that's just to give a very quick overview of what it is. So obviously it's kind of similar to what 40k could be in a different universe, or what Grimdark Future would be from a different game editor as well.
And while we're comparing it to games, I just want to throw out Bolt Action.
Exactly. So it's also a very similar scale, so to speak, like how many models you would have on the table and the type of action you will have, the bolt action. That's absolutely right. As far as I know, it's the 2nd edition, but I didn't know the previous one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, exactly the same boat. Yeah. And I think probably that was the problem with 1st edition.
Yeah, I think they made the decision, and it's fair, and I understand it, to focus on the game that was working the best for them, so Kings of War, because I think they had much more success with Kings of War initially than with their sci-fi stuff. From what I understand, they changed quite a bit the Warpath rules. It was a bit of a mess and it split the community. I'm not too sure about it. I just heard someone talk about it at some point, so maybe that's wrong.
And if it's wrong, write in angrily and tell us. Details at the end of the episode. Please come on the podcast and tell us we're wrong. That would be lovely.
Exactly. Please lecture us. We love to be lectured about stuff.
What are these snowflakes up to now?
Exactly. Like I'm saying wrong things just to angry people and get reactions. No, actually not. But anyway. Anyway, so Firefight. So it's obviously a Mantic game, and so before even looking at rules, I was super excited because I was expecting really good stuff from them, and from having a quick read of the Pathfinder rules with my local Pathfinder, I mean, obviously it is as good as expected, if not better. From my perspective, it takes the great elements from Kings of War, which is the line of sight management. So it's not true line of sight, but instead it's very clearly and explicitly defined line of sight rules. So which unit can see what, and in which conditions you can shoot at them or assault them, and so on. And, the other elements that they took over in Firefight is the command dice and abilities from Vanguard, which is also, I think, one of my favorite aspects of this game. So take two of the best things from two of the other systems and mix them, can only result in something amazing. So that's why I'm really looking forward to it.
And have you actually played a game yet?
Yes, I played one demo game with 1,000 points with my local Pathfinder. So I used proxy models, again foreshadowing to later topic of the month. And it's
Was this the beta? Was this the beta rules, or was this after it was released, or the alpha rules, or whatever?
No. So it was the full rules. He basically, the local Pathfinder had the PDF of the rules as a Pathfinder before release of the game. Actually, so I didn't know anything about it. So I told him what models I have for my Gene Stealer Colts, basically, like 40k Gene Stealer Colts. And he made a 1,000 point list for them.
And were you playing them as Plague?
I played them as Plague, exactly, because that's also the army that I'm interested in later.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah, that was the idea, right? Like, because my Plague models, I have some from Deadzone, but clearly not enough for Firefight yet, or at that point I didn't have them. And so I thought, you know what, why not just use Gene Stealer Cult models? They're pretty similar in a way, and I can try the game. And so that's what happened. And yeah, I mean, compared to 40k, it's same Mantic stuff, right? Like, everything is in one or two books. It's keyword based, and so it's pretty easy to get into it and understand what's actually going on. And you don't have to follow all the latest releases to still basically keep being up to date with the game. And from just a very quick check of the PDF then and one game compared to Grimdark Future, I think it has slightly more depth in what you can do with the game. And also the scenarios and like the interaction with terrain, I think are more interesting in Firefight, and so I think that would make it quite interesting.
That is a classic thing with Mantic games, isn't it? Of just the rules being really clear, simple. There's very little in the way of gotchas, but all of the tactics come from just playing cleverly.
Yeah.
There's no secret information really. It's all the rules for all the factions are very simplified, and in a good way, in my opinion, quite generic, and it's all in the same book.
Right.
And there's no gotchas. It's clean, it's clear, and it's honestly whatever army you want to play, whatever you think is cool, you have a really good chance of winning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just being yourself and having fun, and that is so good. And honestly, I can't go back to playing other game systems where that simply isn't the case. The idea that obviously for example, in Kings of War, I love my Trident Realm. Now, I don't think my Trident Realm list is really strong. I think it's not bad, but it's my list and I love it. Now, if we were playing another game system, I might not have a chance to win the game before we've even started, and that is ultimately, without dropping the name in there again, that is why I stopped playing Age of Sigmar. It's that literally before game started, you knew whether or not you had a chance of winning or not, and that's a really bad feeling, and this is something I do for fun, right? It's just for fun, and I'm not, as you know, Clem, I'm not a super competitive player. When we start rolling the dice, I want to win, but this idea that I don't have a chance of winning before we start, it just feels really weird to me. That seems like a really strange place to be, and with Mantic games, you simply don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the excuse, right? Like,
I always need an excuse. That's a good point.
I played Age of Sigmar. What's the latest? Like 3rd edition. Like, I got the rule book from a friend.
Yeah, 3rd edition. Yeah, I haven't tried it, but 3rd edition. Yeah.
And because I mean, it's a nice book, and as I said, I'm always curious about rule systems, and so I was
beautiful models, beautiful expensive models.
Exactly. I have models anyway, so why not just try them in the rules that they're designed for? And so I played like a basic 1,000 point game or something, and obviously I lost because I played against a very good player, and it was like, yeah, I lost not because I suck, but because there was no way I could win this game, right? It was like, yeah, there was no way.
I could never win.
There was no way you could win this game. Like, sure, your list sucked, and that's about it. Whereas in Kings of War, every single time that I lose, I mean, sometimes I can try to blame dice, but everyone knows that blaming dice is really a weak argument, and so there's no one to blame when you lose Kings of War except yourself and your poor decision making.
The brutal truth. When we come on later to talking about Kings of War and we talk about our trip to Cardiff, I will be disagreeing with you hard, but fundamentally I agree with you. But in this one situation, no, 100% not.
Anyway,
Fantastic. So I got the PDF rules for Firefight in advance, much as your friend the Pathfinder did for the same reason. Well, that's a really weird way to say it, but yeah. So I got the rules in advance.
Right.
But I'm only getting. So I got the starter set with the Marauders and the Enforcers, and just this morning actually I posted off my Enforcer half of the box set to someone in the UK. So we're doing a swapsies.
Nice.
So he's sending me his Marauders and we're doing a swapsies. And it's interesting. I've never played Dwarves before in a game, and I've never played Orcs before in a game. And for Firefight, I'm doing both of those two factions because it's just, why not? I love the Brockers, and I'll be honest, that's what sold me on the Forge Fathers. I love the Brockers. They're just so... I love the Artificers as well. And the Marauders, I love the new hard plastic sculpts, and it's just cool to do something really different. So obviously I'll be building at least 1,000 points, probably more like 1,500 eventually, of those two factions. And that typically is the way I tend to play. I tend to have to do two forces for a game and then get friends to play it. Get people just to turn up and roll some dice with me. So I'm super looking forward to that, and it is just so interesting that they're two factions I've really never looked at in a game. I mean, I think dwarves are really cool in Kings of War, but I love the free dwarves, and there's such cool things going on there. But I'm so many armies into Kings of War already that hasn't made it to the top of the list.
I mean, I understand you, right? Like, I'm also more a goblin player than a dwarf player. Maybe I could be tempted to play evil dwarves because I'm more an evil player than a good guy player.
Yeah, me too. I don't know where that comes from. Yeah, I always go for the weirdo factions, like Trident Realm.
So Abyssal Dwarves. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, so I think that's how it goes, right? Like, you have your own favorite factions, and so it's nice to... try something slightly different for once.
There's some new Goblin models for Firefight / Deadzone, and there's the new Goblin fire teams, and they are really nice. It's the same style as the Kings of War Goblins from Mantic, which I think are just fantastic. It's that kind of similar to kind of the Pathfinder Goblin style, I think. And I think they just look absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I don't know if the Goblin Sniper's a new model, but the Goblin Fire Teams I think is. And yeah, they look absolutely fantastic. And it's just fun. There's the... is it the Stunt Bot or the Grunt Bot? I forget which one.
Grunt Bot, I think.
Grunt Bot is their little mini mech.
Yeah, I think it is.
So it's sort of like a sci-fi suit of armour with a little goblin head poking out the top. I think it's really, really cool.
Right. Yeah, it's a cool model. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I also got the starter, although mine is still... it's supposed to arrive today at my friendly local gaming store. I was stuck at the tunnel, as they say, for a while. I'm also training away my Enforcers. They're not really my thing. And I'm getting double Marauders.
Oh, you're doing it as well. Oh, we're Marauder buddies. Yeah, look at that. Yay, nice. Have you played Orcs before?
Yeah. I mean, in Fantasy Battle, I used to have a very large goblin, like Orc and Goblin collection, and for 40k, I also have like Orcs models. I like greenskins. I usually say I always play like a greenskin. Like I run forward, charge everything that I can, and think after.
This is what I'm looking forward to with Marauders. Is like you're probably exactly your tactics. There's very little. So when I play Trident Realms, it's very cagey, very sort of technical, and I often get it wrong. And with Orcs, it's just you've got Plan A, and if Plan A doesn't work, you've lost. But that's cool. In a way, that's cool, right?
I think. That's the theory, but from checking the army lists for Marauders, I have the impression that they're a bit more solid than that.
Nice.
I didn't build lists yet, but they have amazingly good melee options.
Yeah.
And amazingly good shooty options. And I think you have to find, but they're quite elite overall. I think like it's not a big horde of tons of orcs,
Right.
super cheap fighters. It's not what they do.
And that's in the lore. That's in the lore as well. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
They're not just mindless greenskins, right? They're professional.
Exactly.
You know, they're a bit more like ogres, like smart ogres, right? They're
Exactly.
strategic
They're
and they want to get paid, right?
Exactly. They're mercenaries, and so they're more veteran troops and pretty good fighters in what they do. And I think they will take some skill to be played well. Again, from what I could see, they have really nice tools.
Nice.
But I tried to build a list a couple of times. I was like, I don't even know where I would start with those. And so, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to playing with them as well. But first, I'm no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just starting off doing a load of, I think they're called brawlers, and a load of commandos, the shooty guys.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're equally good. I think the brawlers, the melee guys, are very good melee fighters, from what I could see, and the commandos are pretty good shooters. And so they're not cheap. And yeah, that's it. It will be interesting to see how they behave on the table. But first, I wanna focus on my plague army. At the moment, I'm painting them. Like I assembled a bunch of them. I had some plague minis from a Black Friday sale some time ago. It was like, oh, those mini look super cool. I'm sure I can use them for something at some point.
Usually when I do that, it doesn't work out that way. Usually they're just sitting in the basement making me feel guilty. But isn't it great when it does actually work out?
And so I got... it can happen, right? It's kind of a gamble, and that gamble took a couple of years to pay out, but it certainly did. And so now I basically got just a few more models, and boom, I have like 1,500 points of plague to assemble and paint. And so I'm kind of going the speed paint way with them, because I would rather have some paint on them when I put them on the table than none. And it's great.
But they're looking very good, though. I mean, you know, I always really like your painting style, even if you know you're not the most. And I don't even know if this is fair to say, but even if you're not, even if you're trying to get them just on the tabletop,
thanks.
I think they always look really, really nice and smart when you do them. I love your use of colour and
Thanks.
just your blending and everything like that. Just think it looks really, really nice. And I've just seen a few shots of your plague, and it's the same. They just look cool. And I'm not a big fan, actually. I know a lot of people do it, and obviously each to their own. People kind of do kind of wacky colours with the plague, and I prefer the kind of just like grim, disgusting, plaguey zombie look to them.
I mean, for me, so the approach I took with them was so the usual prime black and then zenithal white, contrast paints on top to be relatively quick. But also on the color scheme, I think it's important when you do a kind of a mass scale, so like 50 to 100 miniatures like you have in the Firefight army, to have really a cohesive paint job, right? And so it's very, very important for me to select the right colors, like do a couple test models. And once you figure that out, I think the technique you apply on the models themselves doesn't matter so much. I mean, you can be more or less neat when you paint them, but if you have the right color choices to begin with, it does a huge part of the job of it looking like a pretty good army.
Completely.
And I think also when you have like 40 zombies on the table, who cares about did you do highlights on the boots of all of them, right? Like that's not what will pop when you look at them. It's much more important to have
for you personally, right? I mean, it's, you know, like for the way we paint, which is just, you know, we want things to look nice on the table without being obsessive. But like most people are going to look at your army from about 6 feet away and go, yeah, that looks really good. They're not, as you say, they're not going to be bothering to check if the boots of each zombie are highlighted, right? If you've, you know, edge highlighted them.
I can tell you already, right? Like if you look closely at my zombies, at my plague models, some of them I just forgot to paint. You know, like one small part of flesh somewhere is not painted. And then when I'm doing the next layer, well, okay, that's going to be green then, and that's it. And when
100%. But it's
exactly.
But you as a person have to be at peace with that, right? And some people just aren't. The idea that my army is not perfectly painted, that's going to be an issue for people. So, but looking good.
I know. I mean, it took me a while to get there. I think it's a trade-off, right? I think it took me some time to realize that it made me more miserable to try to reach perfection with painting my models than it did to do something okay-ish and actually complete a project, and then don't feel guilty because I still want to buy some new models and I haven't finished painting the previous ones, or I play with a half-painted army. I'm saying half-painted, but it's actually 12 models are super good-looking, but then 80 models around them are not touched at all, and that just doesn't look good. Whereas, if you reach like a final state on models, I mean, you completely forget about, I completely cut corners here, and there, but in the end it doesn't matter. The army looks great from when you play with them, and it's not a painting competition, right? Like it's a hobby. I do this to relax after work.
100%.
And then I enjoy having painted model to play on the weekend with friends or in the evenings with friends.
100%.
And that's it.
As long as surely the most important thing is we're all having fun and having a good time, and that's the whole point of the hobby in a very, I would say, increasingly stressful world. It's as long as we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, and so, but you're absolutely right.
That has got to be the goal, surely.
You're absolutely right. Like for lots of people, like in the gaming club, I hear people complaining about that, right? Like, that's a large army. I'll never manage to paint it, or it's taking me forever. It's stressing me over, and it's true that I think people have to just overcome those fears in a way. Like, yes, you're not painting your whole army like a box art level because you're not a professional painter anyway. And why are you doing this? Well, you're doing this to have fun painting them, like it's a relaxing activity. And then you're doing this to have painted models to play on the weekend. And doesn't matter if the boots are highlighted or if you have advanced layering or whatever on your models. Not really, right? Like all that matters is that you had a good time painting them, and that they...
And a good time throwing dice and laughing at your friend's misfortune. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's really critical.
Yeah, and sadly, actually, my main Deadzone friend, he's probably not going to go into Firefight just because it stresses him out. The idea of painting that many models he finds really stressful. And it's something that I honestly can't relate to because I've gone so crazy with so many Kings of War armies. Honestly, there isn't really anything that would scare me in that regard now. So I'm just sort of completely desensitized to batch painting. Last week I painted 30 Forge Father models, exactly as we're saying. If I know they have issues with them, but from 2 feet away they look totally fine on the table, and I'm comfortable with that. And I painted, after work, got the kids to bed, and I painted 30 of them. Okay, I went to bed at 2:30 in the morning and had to be awake for 6:30. But it's not an ideal solution, I grant you. But I can get that if I absolutely have to. And for some reason, I really felt like I had to. When you start painting something and you're like, well, I think just a couple of more bits of the process, if I do one more load of painting their skin, one more coat of orange on their armor, I think I'm going to be nearly finished.
Right.
And then 4 hours later I'm still like, okay, I think 2 more steps and I'm finished. And it's yeah.
No, that's a good point. I mean, for me, I think the main issue I have with painting is like the decision paralysis. When I look at a model and I'm like, okay, what is this bit? Is it the pouch? Is it his jacket? Is it a weapon? Right. Do I paint it black? Do I paint it brown? But which brown? Or is it green or yellow or whatever it is? And so for me, once I've solved this first question of what colors to put on the model, the act of actually putting the colors on the model, I think is very relaxing, right? It's just you have a brush, you just slap some paint on there, and that's it, right? And so I think if you do the first step of deciding the color scheme for your army, and you have a good reference of what you want to achieve and how you want to get to a done state for your models, I think it's more than half of the work done. At least for me, it's really the way it is. Like, just a fun fact, that's one huge reason why I have a lot of Tyranid models. Because Tyranids, yeah, it's pretty easy, right? Like, what color scheme do you want for Tyranids? You need a color for carapace, for flesh, for thorns, and maybe some highlights for weapons and eyes and tongue and stuff. And once you have these colors set,
but there's no ambiguity. You know what you know where you are. Yeah.
Any Tyranid model. Yeah, I know. I have my 5 colors. I know where to put each one of those, and rest is just spending some time with it.
And then it's relaxing just to slap some paint on stuff, rubbing paint on models. Yeah, funnily enough, I had that exact same issue you just mentioned of going, is that a buckle or is that a pocket or what is that?
Yeah.
With my Marauders, actually. So I'm really not sure, and I'm not sure what's going on with their legs either. So I don't know. Is it arm? I guess it's armour of some kind, but
yeah.
I find that weirdly confusing. And they've got kind of like a bum bag, I guess in America you call it a fanny pack, on their backs, sort of on the behind their bottom. I'm not really sure what that is, and I think that reflects in the way I've painted it.
Yeah,
the ambiguity of the
nice,
bottom.
Nice thing to do. I mean, orcs are notorious for this kind of ambiguity, like tons of leather straps here and there, and you can go crazy and like spend as many hours as you want on each one of those. Or you can paint a whole army and just decide,
right.
Okay, well, those are pants, and so I'm going to paint everything pants-wise, pants color, and then there's a belt, and anything that seems to be attached to the belt will be painted belt color, and that's about it, right? Like then a jacket and some skin and done. And again, if you look closely at the model and you want to do display, competition level painting, then sure, you can detail every single pouch and fanny pack and whatever they have. If you're trying to paint 50 of them for your army, then it's, in my opinion at least, unless you are happy with taking 2 years to get them done, then it's a different equation.
I've never been the best painter in the world, but the one thing I am is really fast at painting, like crazily fast. And actually, I think as I've been painting 4 years, something like this, my painting has got a lot better. But I'm just as quick as I always was. I think I'm actually doing a lot more steps, and I'm, going back in and doing a lot more highlighting, and I'm doing a lot more blending. I'm a much, much better painter, and I'm more technical, but I still bash things out really, really quickly, which is, because I want to get it on the table, right? That's my main priority. I'm not trying to win a Golden Demon or Brush with Death is the Mantic one, I think. I'm not, no chance. I'm not actually very talented at all. But to me, I think up to a certain point, painting is a learning skill, right? It's a learned skill. It's something you can practice and get better at.
It is.
If you look at some of the top professional painters, like Angel in Spain, that guy is crazy talented. That's unbelievable. And I think you can only get so good as just learning. But for what we're after, that's plenty good. That's really, really fine.
Yeah,
it's really, really fine. And then you see what someone who's really a master at what they do does, and you go, oh my goodness. But for our purposes, getting up to just tabletop standard and playing games, perfect.
Yeah, I think you just have to look at it not as a competition. Like, are you trying to compete with a professional painter who went through hard school and is also gifted, is talented in painting, and you as a working dad, painting your models maybe 1 or 2 days a week after work and after putting the kids to bed. Obviously, I mean, life is fair, and yes, you cannot paint as well as he can. That's completely normal. And so if you don't take it as a competition, but rather as an inspiration, then things look completely different, right? And I think that's
the way. That is 100% the way to look at it. Yeah, if I'm directly comparing myself, and as I've used the example, I'll say it again: Angel in Spain and his incredible painting and everything, and the journey he's gone on. We've got to remember that he must have got better. He didn't come out fully formed with a paintbrush in his hand. He's obviously gone through a learning journey as well. But if given everything as I have in my life going on, if I'm trying to compare myself to that guy, I've got to look in the mirror, right? Because that's a very silly thing to do. But as you said, Clem, and a really good point, well, use that as an inspiration to improve and get better. And if that's what you want to do, but don't look at it as a negative thing or it somehow reflects negatively on you.
Yeah.
It's, we're all on a painting journey. We're all, we can all say nice things, and sometimes you see on Facebook in, for example, the Fanatics groups, someone has literally painted their first ever model. And just that in itself of somebody trying this out, for the very first time, and then having the confidence to take a photo of that and then share it with a load of strangers all over the world and go, hey, look, I did this. I've never done this before. That is amazing in itself, isn't it? Just that whole thing to me, just putting yourself out there like that.
I think it is pretty nice.
I think that's super cool.
I think it is pretty nice. And I think also what I like about pro painters, like really well painted models, is, as I said, it's an inspiration, but not necessarily to do the same thing. But I would be like, oh, I really like that model more than this one. And why is that? And then maybe it's the color choices. Maybe it's that technique right there. Like, oh, they've done a very interesting, glazing or whatever, or blending on this model. And sure, they've done it to a perfect level that I will never probably try to reproduce. But maybe I can take an inspiration and do a very simplified version of it. And instead of taking 20 layers, just do it with 2 contrast paints that I wet blend together very quickly and get something similar. And that's what I mean by inspiration, right? Like, it's not, oh, I aspire to do a very complex non-metallic metal on all of my 120 dwarfs in my army. That would be insane, right? But maybe the result that you get from this paint style will let you choose colors for your own army, and then you have taken an inspiration and not try to copy what they've done. And so that's really what I mean.
And it's the same if you it's the same with everything, right? So if you see, a celebrity chef or something. Now, I'm terrible. Like, if you give me a recipe to follow or just anything in life, if you just give me a how-to guide on do step 1, now do step 2, now do step 3, for some reason my brain can't cope with that, and at some point I'll just massively screw it up, right? But if I can just, as you said, Clem, if I can just take bits of that, of like, the intention or the style that somebody else is trying to paint,
I'm the same.
Just to improve myself. So I'm not copying step by step by step, but just getting an idea, a sense of what they're trying to do, and then trying to incorporate that into my models. I think that's super cool.
Also there are some pro painted models that I just don't like, right? Like I will look at it and like, I think this model doesn't look good. Like the paint job, I just don't like it. Like the color choice is not good.
If I'm completely honest,
not really my style or whatever.
If I'm completely honest, I think that's an issue Mantic has had, because I think I see the pro shots of a lot of the old, definitely not the case with the new stuff, but if we're going back a few years, I mean, what put me off going into Deadzone until 3rd edition, I probably looked 5 or 6 times online at Deadzone models, going, oh yeah, everyone says great things about this game, and then I look at the models and I go, none of them are grabbing me at all. Like, I'm going to wait it out. Now, I get the models and I actually really like them. I mean, I love the Brockers, and then you look at the Brockers on the box and they've got this like neon bright, hurts your eyes orange on their kind of jumpsuit things. And it looks weird. It's not to my taste. You can't say it's painted badly because it's absolutely not. Yeah. And I do think that's an area Mantic over the years haven't done themselves any favours in, where they're not presenting their things in the best possible light. For example, Kings of War, I've got 3 hordes of Elf Palace Guard. They're all Mantic models. Now, when I bought those, I bought them just because they're Mantic. There was no way I would have bought those if it was just on pure aesthetic quality. But actually, I think now I've got them all, built, painted and based. They look great. They are a little on the small side. That is definitely true. But the Palace Guard models are actually really nice. And I think that's really sad when they're just not putting them in the best light possible. When you're kind of like positively surprised by a model you've spent quite a bit of money on, that's an unfortunate situation to be in, right? Particularly when the competition are just so good at selling themselves.
I think that's completely true. I think that's one key aspect of Mantic models is in a way they are a bit more rare, right? Like if you're looking at I want to see a Space Marine painted, you can find thousands and thousands of Space Marine painted by all sorts of pro painters, amateur painters, everything, right? You can find reference pictures and from all various angles so easily. Mantic models, not so much, right? Like I remember when I was starting my Forces of the Abyss, like Vanguard warband, and I was looking for reference pictures, and well, basically the only reference pictures were the official pictures from Mantic. So that's one color scheme, and if you don't like that color scheme, then you're screwed. It's like, I don't like those models. No, you don't like the color scheme that is applied on the official box art. And also, sadly, I think there aren't enough pictures of the official models on the website. Like most of the time, you will have one or maybe two pictures of the models, like the full unit. I want to see the models from every angle and like 10 pictures of each model, right?
And while we're getting into this now, we're off topic for the section, but that's fine. We're doing it now.
Right.
The other thing is, and then a lot of people have asked recently, is build instructions. Now, we've already discussed previously, I am awful at following instructions. So for me, actually, that's totally fine. I like to kind of figure it out for myself.
Right.
Yes, I glue things slightly wrong, but I'm comfortable with that. That's just the way my brain works. But I can see it from the other point of view that lots of people feel very uncomfortable without having instructions. Like, for example, my wife, right? If we're building IKEA furniture, no, we have the she's German, right? So we have the instructions, we follow the instructions, everything will be okay. Whereas I've already lost the instructions,
Yeah, well, I have something similar. My wife's different, but yeah, we are similar. I mean, I think you and I have the same approach to cooking as well.
Exactly.
Like, if you try to get me to follow recipes, you're going to have a bad time.
Buddy.
But I will actively read as many recipes as possible because I always take something interesting from recipes.
You're trying to understand the topic, not the steps to do something. You're trying to understand the whole area. That's what I'm like too. Yeah, exactly. And let's bring it back to. So we were talking about Firefight and Sci-fi. Let's bring it back there.
Yeah. So Firefight. Yeah. So I think we can maybe conclude also on this. Like, what are you looking forward to, and what are you planning for Firefight?
Yeah. So when I got into Deadzone, this is classic me all over now. So when I got into Deadzone when 3rd edition dropped, I bought the starter box because that's fantastic value. Like, if people are trying to get into Mantic games, I'd almost always recommend get the starter box for that game because it gives you 2 little forces. The Firefight one is chock full of models. Like, the value in that is absolutely brilliant, and they're really nice models, and they're easy to paint, easy to build, all that stuff. In my opinion, no instructions though. Now for Deadzone, I got the starter box, and then I kind of looked at, just checked out the Mantic website, and I noticed, hang on a second, they're rebranding their products for 3rd edition. And I don't disagree with this at all because Mantic is a company that needs to keep the lights, pay to keep the lights on and keep making these amazing games we love. But I noticed actually the newer stuff is a lot nicer, but the old stuff was really, really, really good value, right? So I went out and bought. I noticed they weren't restocking. I went out and bought the mega armies for Enforcers, Asterians, Forge Fathers, and Plague. Yeah, Plague. Right, so and then at this time Firefight was also announced. I can't remember in what order it was, but I was kind of like, okay, I'm good. I'm kind of future proofed.
Yeah.
So I'm good. I'm pretty good to go in terms of what direction I want to go for Firefight. But yeah, Firefight. The Forge Fathers are done. I've got well over 1,000 points. Ready. I've still got to build the tank, which is super cool, and I've got some other really cool stuff. They've got like I think they're called Hammer Fist Drop Troopers. They sound really fun to play, where you can deploy them. They kind of got jetpacks, so they sound really, really cool. But I really like as well in Firefight, they've gone for pretty much everything. Infantry moves 6 inches. right? Rather than the whole, okay, you're a dwarf, you move 4 inches.
Yep.
You know? So that's cool. So for Deadzone, So I had my Star Saga box set as well, which I got, I think, when the pandemic hit and Mantic did a big sale, Isolation Protocol sale, which I thought was actually really funny. And so I picked up Star Saga for something ridiculous, like €20 or something like that. And if you get Star Saga, which I didn't realise at the time, you're getting a Maison Labs strike team for Deadzone. And they are super fun to play. So I've got... I also got, and I don't know where I got them from, but I've got 2 of the really scary guys. I forget, Abominations, I think they're called. And so I've got this strike team with, zombies and 2 Abominations, and it's really, really scary. I've got 1 guy with a flamer and 1 guy with a las rifle, and then nothing else has any shooting attacks. I've got a load of lab techs, because I think they're 7 points, and they are absolutely amazing in the game. And crucially, they give off no VPs to your opponent when they die. So you just sit them on a point, and they might get shot, they might not, and they're scoring your points. Your opponent has to deal with them in some way because they're generating you victory points. And the other really nasty thing they've got is they've got this kind of like shock prod thing, which almost never does damage, but it pushes them a cube away. So I have had hilarious situations before where there's been a Forge Father sitting on an objective, even the leader, and I've used, run up a 7-point lab tech and shock prodded him out of a window, and he's fallen down off the point. And that never ceases to be funny. Because you don't have to damage to do the push, you just have to wound them. And that is extremely funny and extremely powerful in the game. So the lab techs are the saviour of the Maison Labs. But you also have the terrible disadvantage that if you're... So the Abyssals and the Zombies too have Rampage. So if they take a damage and you don't have one of the lab techs or someone with one of these proddy things in the same cube, they can go crazy, and you have to roll a dice when they activate. So once they've taken 1 point of damage, every time you activate them, you roll a d8. If you get a 1 or 2, your opponent gets to activate them. So obviously that can mean you attacking your own stuff. And with the Abominations, because they're size 4, you can't fit a lab tech in the cube with them. So it is just, if you put 1 damage on them, there's a 1 in 4 chance that they're going to rebel and bad stuff is going to happen. If you roll a 7 or 8, good stuff happens. So, for example, if they would have been pinned, they're no longer pinned, and that's done devastating things to me in a game. But yeah, I think if you're playing against the Abominations, I feel like I'm not calling them the right thing. The big scary Maison Labs monsters that's also in the plague list.
I think there are Abominations, no?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm saying a different thing every time, but yeah, Abominations. So yeah, my big advice to playing against them: get a wound on them nice and early, and then for the rest of the game, you are making them roll a dice that may be disastrous for them. But either way, that is extremely, extremely funny. I've got the stuff to do Rebs. I'm going to do Rebs at some point. And now this is just going to be an endless list of me doing factions. I've got the 2 starter sets.
So let's be faster.
That's exactly right. I don't actually know if there's a faction I'm not going to do, because I've got the VM in from the starter box, for example. So I've got probably enough to do 200 points with them. But I played, so I'll go through the ones I've actually played so far. So Maison Labs, I've played Asterians, and I've got 2 versions of the Spectre, and it's a beautiful, beautiful model. It's really fun. But actually, the way I tend to just play with friends, and I feel a little bit guilty running that. That feels really, really strong to me, particularly the double Spectre list. So I let my friend play that against me recently, against my Maison Labs, and that was a really close game. That was his first ever game of Deadzone, and he won. It finished 20 points to 19, and if I'd have done 1 extra wound, I would have won the game. So that was unbelievably close, and that was his first ever game, and that sort of speaks volumes of how amazing Deadzone is. But I ran last time I played. I did a demo at a local gaming store, local friendly gaming store, and I ran the Nameless, and that was really fun. And that was just, I was worried actually because I wrote the list literally 5 minutes before I had to go. I was really nervous it wasn't at all competitive and was just a weird bag of nonsense, which it was, but I had like 6 different little scuttly thingies. Some of them had ink sacs, some of them didn't, and I just scuttled them onto all the points and ended up getting a really big win in the end actually. And they've got I forget what it's called, they've got the crab man thing, the big guy, completely forgotten what it's called. They do almost no damage. What's it called?
Yeah, I don't know the names.
Yeah, right. They do almost no damage and they're quite a lot of points, but they're so hard to kill. They're so hard to kill. So I just sat him on a point, 2 VP's point, and there were 3 Forge Fathers trying to kill him and failing to, and that actually went really well. I really like the Nameless. I love the style. I mean, as you know, I'm a Trident Realms player in Kings of War, but they're nice board game pieces, I would say. So they're very static poses. They were never really designed to be used as a tabletop game, right? You know, it's not the same as having like these beautiful hard plastic Marauders. So hopefully that's something Mantic, and I'm sure it's something Mantic will look at, right? They only have so much bandwidth, but anyone who's interested in playing the Nameless, they're a really fun faction to play, really interesting. Loads of synergies between the different units as well. So you can kind of mark your opponents with pheromones with some shooting things. And then you get an extra dice if something else then charges it in combat that turn. So that's think little things like that are really, really powerful, and it's really fun, right? Just have little.
Yeah, at the moment they're not in Firefight though. The Nameless, right? Like.
Sorry, we're talking about Firefight, right? I'm talking about Deadzone. Yeah, sorry.
Fine. I think they will come. They will come out to Firefight at some point. I think it will be also a good excuse for Mantic to expand the range a little bit and update some of the models, maybe, who knows.
Fantastic.
For now, Firefight I think has a sort of limited selection. Like the Rebels are also not in Firefight.
Rebs.
They're not there yet, but obviously I think they will come.
I heard Rob Berman talking on the Deadzone podcast, and he was basically. It sounded very much like for there to be a firefight faction, you need to have hard plastics for the troops.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, and on my side for the Firefight, well, I'm still painting my plague. I've made good progress on them. Like I'm basically done with the zombies. Meaning most of it is done, right? Like the shooty guys, like the stage 3As are left to paint. Like I've painted the skin on them, but the rest is still to be done. And then hopefully I will get my rulebook very soon, and be able to play like some games with actual models, the actual plague models, I mean. And right after that, we'll start with my Marauders, I think. If I manage to find a good paint recipe for them, I think I will knock them out pretty quickly as well. And just yesterday, I actually bought a bunch of Mega Forces on sale, like you mentioned. Like they're sadly not available anymore. Like was the old Warpath Mega Forces, and it's just incredible value.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a local group of people interested in Firefight here in Berlin, and so we basically bought 4 of the Mega Forces on sale someplace in Spain, and we will split those for Firefight armies. And and the next thing is we're discussing a slow growth challenge for Firefight. So we'll see how that one goes. Although people have been pretty motivated and quite fast in already assembling and starting to paint their models. So I'm not sure if it will be that much of a slow growth or a growth just in itself. Yeah.
Quick spurt.
So, so that's about it for Firefight, I think.
It's a nice way to do it. And I've got my very first game coming up at the end of this month. I think I've already mentioned it, but yeah, I'm going up to near Cologne to meet a friend of mine to play. I think he's doing Enforcers. So he's going to do a barbecue and we're going to play, which
sounds like a perfect combination.
Yeah. Fantastic. So now we've mixed this up a little bit. So let's move on to talking about Deadzone, which I've already been talking about. Apologies.
That's perfect. I mean, it is connected, right? Like that's the beauty of it. Like you get into Deadzone, you only need maybe a dozen models, and then very easily you can expand that into Firefight army. I think that's completely fair thing, and I think also when you play Firefights. Deadzone is completely worth trying as well because it is a slightly different system.
100%.
It has very interesting
100%.
mechanics, and so it's completely worth trying as well. I bought 2 starters for Deadzone. Well, basically 1.5, because one of my friends only wanted the rule books after all. Didn't want the models, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna make use of the terrain that is in there, and so I have
nice.
Not assembled that terrain yet. It's been kind of down in the to-do lists on the hobby side, but next thing for me on Deadzone is to assemble the terrain, and then I can actually play games with my plague stuff, and soon after my marauder stuff, I think. So yeah.
Fantastic. Have you tried Deadzone yet?
I have not. No, I read the rules. When we were at Clash of Kings, they had a book, and so I remember checking it out and thinking, okay, that's perfect. That's very clearly a super high quality book, and the rules really sound amazing. And then it dropped. We were still not playing right when the starter dropped, and then people locally were playing other stuff instead. Like I've been focusing more on Kings of War lately, and so there's been no time for Deadzone, unfortunately. But yeah, at some point I will.
What's difficult to get across is just how fun the game is. It's crazily fun. It's so good. It's so clean and clear. That it's kind of got 3 things going for it, I think, that are just really, really special. One is the cube system, which is obviously very obvious, but that's really fun all in of itself, and just how important terrain is. You've then got the exploding 8s mechanic, which I think is also in Vanguard, right? But it's just people just love that, right? We go nuts for it.
Yeah, it is.
And then the other thing is the command dice. That gives a whole nother dimension to the tactics. So you could do some really, really clever things, but it costs you. So whether it's using a move dice to move a sniper and getting an extra shot with them, or if you've got 2 move dice, moving a guy with a rocket launcher, moving him up, shooting and moving back again. The clever things that you can do that just wouldn't be possible without those are will win or lose you the game. And the beautiful thing is now, I think for 3rd edition, you can spend any dice to re-roll a dice, and that is just really nice. So nothing is wasted. So you get, every time you roll your command dice, you can decide to re-roll some or all of those dice, but you can only do it once, right? So if you roll your dice, let's say you have 4 dice in your faction, you roll your 4 command dice, you like 2 of them but don't like 2, you keep the 2, tell your opponent what you're doing, re-roll those 2. Now, you have to make that decision once, and then you must stick with the re-roll, and you can't re-roll them and say, now I still want to re-roll this one. You just get 1 re-roll. But it just gives so much to the tactics of the game. It's absolutely fantastic.
It really keeps the game alive, right? Like because there's always an element of surprise, right? Like with those dice, and it's in Vanguard. The power dice are slightly different, but I think they give the same outcome, which is from one turn to another, you never know what's going to happen exactly, right? And also for your own troops, because you don't know how many of those dice you're going to get, and maybe one turn you'll get lucky and have like an opportunity to do this or that because the dice give you that option. Or maybe what you had in mind is, okay, I really need to have the movement option, and then you don't, and then you get something else instead, and you're like, oh shit, and then you need to adjust your tactical plan on the spot. And so for everyone involved, it keeps the game very alive, right? Like it's always surprising, and even with pretty simple rules otherwise, with this element of surprise, I think it really keeps you engaged and really having a good time and having fun with the game. I think it's
and it makes you feel clever, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's
when you
also,
do something really smart, right? Because of the dice.
Because you have to adjust to whatever happens with those dice. And I think it's similar, right, in bolt action, like you mentioned it earlier, with the activation dice in the bag. There's an element of surprise there. And it's not just...
And there's advantages and disadvantages to going early or later. It depends on the situation.
Exactly. Sometimes you do not want to see one of your dice come out of the activation bag.
Exactly.
And whatever happens, it's a surprise. And in a way, it's a random element that is not just, oh, did you succeed your 4+2 hits? Oh, no, you thought you did a wound to me, but I have an invulnerable save, and I just rolled a 6, and then it's over. No, it's something slightly more than that. Like it has a bit more depth and width to it, and I think that really brings something to the game. Yeah.
And of course, in Deadzone, it's public information what dice you have, so you know what dice you've got. You know what dice your opponent has. Now, if you're a new player, that probably doesn't mean a great deal. But obviously, as you get better at the game, you've got a much better idea of what your opponent can do with those dice, and it adds another dimension to it. It's really, and I think you get away with it a lot more because it's you activate a model, I activate a model,
yes,
and then you go back and forth.
Absolutely.
So I think if it was I do everything, you do everything, then I think possibly that could be overpowered, and that would feel bad, right?
Yeah.
If your opponent has rolled, 5 dice that give them an extra shooting and they're Tau, let's say, that's probably not going to be a fun game. But because it's you go, I go, it balances itself beautifully.
Exactly. It's not like gives you like super powerful combos that you can't do anything against. It's an element of surprise, including for yourself. And it's exactly how it worked also in Vanguard, and I think that's exactly how it's going to work in Firefight. And so I think it's a pretty cool mechanic.
Really positive thing, absolutely. And then just to round off talking about Deadzone, I've got my artificers painted up, which are super, super cool. I've given 2 demo days at a local gaming club in Bad Camberg, which is a little game shop, but it's very small and claustrophobic, but do they cram a lot of games in there, and there's a little space right in the middle of the shop, and boy, it's a squeeze. But I've given a couple of demo games there.
Nice. And
it's gone down really well. Really enjoyed it. It's really, really nice.
So they stock Deadzone stuff?
Did
they stock also Deadzone, or?
So they don't have Deadzone yet, but the owner's interested. They do have Armada. They've got Terrain Curates. I got my Armada starter set in there.
Nice. So you're doing the Lord's work, right?
Yeah.
Like, field work.
Right.
That's how it's done.
Yeah.
It's completely true.
I'm demoing the game and then buying the game. They've also got some really old Kings of War stuff, but I think the guy's fairly interested in Mantic. I mean. At some point, COVID kind of messed it up, but at some point I'll be giving Kings of War demos in there. And actually, I'm a little bit frightened to give Kings of War demos. Deadzone is really simple.
Mm-hmm.
The Kings of War is just it's the. I tell you what it is about the Kings of War demos is, and maybe we don't go into this now, but just like I'm slightly intimidated by just. If I just put down, for example, on the table 2 blocks of infantry or 2 infantry regiments, you're not going to get a sense of Kings of War.
Right.
To me, the magic happens at about 2,000 points. That's where you're really playing Kings of War.
Yeah. So
as a demo experience, I'm not really sure how to do it.
I think it's a topic for another episode, maybe. But the demos we've been doing locally in Berlin is at 1,000 points. And those are pretty small armies, but if you select them carefully when you build the lists for your demo, and you select the scenario and the terrain placement, we've been pretty successful with our demos. I think it works well. Like in 2 hours, you can do a 1,000 point game with a complete beginner in Kings of War, and it works quite well. But it is challenging for sure. Also, it's kind of a hard sell, right? Like if you take someone who has 0 miniatures, you say, "Hey, do you want to get started with Kings of War?" Well, that's how it is.
Yeah, we're going to get onto this topic, but I feel that very keenly. Whereas if you get someone, so I've got a load of 3D printed terrain. I've got the Mantic terrain, the table, and actually I think my terrain looks a bit naff the way I've painted it, if I'm completely honest. But hey, you get it all on the table, and in a different way, Kings of War is as well, but you look at it and you go, wow, that looks cool. People are instantly drawn to that.
Yeah.
And then you get them rolling D8s, and they're on an 8 train. My God, that is one of the most exciting things you can do in the world, right?
It is. That's true.
So if you've got someone and they roll an 8 and then they get that, you see the excitement of, oh, I get to roll that again. And oh, I got another one. And once someone experiences that, it's really easy. And then look,
why
give me 30 euros and you've got everything you need to play the game with me.
Why do you need
that is so easy,
when you can
right?
have exploding 8s, right? Like heroin
Yeah.
fixed, it's nothing compared to exploding 8s. That's completely true. All right.
We might need to edit that bit out. Oh yeah, by the way, I ticked the box. We are family friendly content, Clem.
Oh.
Yeah. maybe swear in French. That's fine. And just to round off Deadzone. So tomorrow night, so Friday night, I am going to a club that I've completely forgotten the name of right now. Before COVID, I was supposed to be going to this gaming club. It seems like it's a very big, well-established club with lots of members. It's in, I'm going to guess, Hanau, which is a not particularly affluent area east of Frankfurt. It's like a large industrial town, basically, that's the other side of Frankfurt to me. It's about a 50 minutes drive for me to get there, but my friend lives in Fulda, and he's played Kings of War. He's got an old Warhammer Fantasy Army, so we've played a few games of Kings of War with that, and he's busy painting stuff, so that's cool. So we're going to meet at this club I've never been to before. I know a guy that's a member, so we're sort of, we're going along to the game night. So we're going to play some Deadzone. So it's my friend's first game of Deadzone. So I'll take, I've got a Marauders list, and I've got a Forge Fathers list. I'm going to take a few Matsudan. I'm going to take the Spectre just to show, oh, by the way, Mantic models, look how nice these resin models are. So I'm going to do all that stuff, and honestly, I mean, Deadzone is just so good. It speaks for itself, to be quite honest. It's just so darn fun. So I'm looking forward to that, actually. Yeah, so it's
cool.
Yeah,
And,
that's cool to do on a Friday night as well. Yeah.
Do you have any plans for the campaign coming up?
Oh, that's a good segue into our next section. Believe it or not, listeners, we do have sections. We're just not abiding by them. Yes. So, me and a friend of mine, Dominic, are doing something. He's being very cryptically quiet, which he tends to. But it was his suggestion, actually, to do something for the campaign. So it's officially starting on the 16th of May. Now, we're having a game on the 13th of May, but we won't know what the special rules are, will we? So I don't think we can call tomorrow night's a campaign game, can we? But yeah, we definitely have to play some campaign games. There's a few guys in a very small game club in Wiesbaden who are interested in Deadzone, I believe. So I'll try and organise something there, maybe next weekend.
Nice.
If I can get the time, if I can get that signed off. But yeah, that would be great. But I definitely want to do something for the campaign and just show some love. So I'll try and get some pictures.
Describe a little bit. So what's the pitch for the campaign? Like, do you know the setup and everything?
Yeah. So full information is available on the Mantic website. So it's running. So it's starting the 16th of June. So that's the official launch.
Of May.
Location 1 will be revealed of May. Thank you, buddy. So the 16th of May, 2022.
23.
So.
Sorry.
Do you know when you said that, I didn't think, no, that's wrong. I thought, oh my God.
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
So to summarise,
16th of May, Deadzone campaign.
16th of May, the Deadzone campaign is starting, and it's running all the way to the 20th of June. So it's running for basically a month, and we're looking forward to this because this is going to drive the plot of what's happening, which is always super, super cool. So Magnetar, which is a massive city continent, it's sort of like a nice mega city one, I suppose, right? On this planet, Magnetar, the VM Min are bursting out of everywhere, and of course, because it's Deadzone, everyone wants to get in. The moment something goes wrong, everyone just tries to grab what they can and make the best out of a bad situation. So that's going to be really exciting. Do you think you're going to do something for the campaign?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're too focused on Firefight these days. So I think we'll keep an eye on what's going on in the campaign. Also to figure out how the universe is evolving, because from what I understand, the fluff around Deadzone and Firefight is actually quite interesting. Like, it's not just, it's the green future and everyone is sad and it's war and blah, blah. No, it's actually the future, and there are various races and aliens of all sorts, and sometimes things do go wrong, and then you can fight about it. But it's not just, there are skulls on everything and so on, right? And so I think for that reason I will keep an eye on the developments from the campaign.
Yeah, and to be honest, it would. I think it's just a really good excuse for you to try a game of Deadzone, and then you'll do what I did and go, oh my god, this game is just as good as Kings of War. And it's so interesting because it's completely different design decisions to Kings of War. I don't mean this unkindly to Kings of War, because I love Kings of War. It is a much more modern game. It's a very, the design sensibilities are super modern and clean. And Kings of War is a very clean game, but it's very, it feels really different, not just in as much as one's a sci-fi game and one's a fantasy game. Right. I absolutely love Kings of War, but you will absolutely love Deadzone.
I think what's stopping me for Deadzone at the moment is not having assembled terrain, and I feel like without proper terrain, the game just doesn't work.
Don't even try it without the terrain. Yeah. So the terrain is. I mean, it would be probably even more so, but it would be kind of similar actually in Kings of War, wouldn't it? I mean, if you had a game, if you had a 2,300 point game without terrain, that would massively skew the game.
Yeah, I mean, the only
thing you wouldn't get all the tactical decisions out of it, right?
Of course, it's just in Kings of War, I have the impression that you can take a piece of paper, cut it in a round potato shape, and that's a forest. And then you can play Deadzone is probably...
Right forest, right hill, height 3.
Exactly, you write on it and that's it, right? From what I understand, Deadzone really needs the 3D aspect of the game.
It does, it's key.
And
that's why
Necromunda is my favorite game, right? Like from teenage days. And so the 3D element is very keen to my heart, but I also kind of want to make it justice and have proper terrain to try it out.
You have to do it properly. Yeah, 100% you have to do it properly. Yeah. Although I must admit, I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't think you've ever just cut out a bit of paper and said, right, that's a forest. I can't imagine you doing that.
Oh, I absolutely did. Yeah, I've done that.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I've played with empty pieces of cardboard on a couple of occasions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But you're right, and that's why, so Deadzone needs terrain. You need terrain, and not just from the perspective that shooting is really powerful.
No, it's how you do the strategic aspect of it. But the good news is with my Deadzone starter, I have plenty of terrain. I just need to sit down one evening and assemble some of it.
Assemble it, yeah. Actually, and do you know what? I've made loads of mistakes that really bug me now. So, for example, at some point, who knows why I did this? I've got 2 air conditioning units just glued together on the side of a building. And I'm like, no, that's not a thing. That's so. The way I've done it is triggering me, but that's my problem. But it's actually pretty fun to build the Mantic terrain, and obviously painting it is easy. You can't really go wrong.
I mean, happy with I have a bit of a decision paralysis. Like, but what kind of buildings do I want? But I think you can't really go wrong, right? Like,
you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. It's modular. You can't really go wrong, and right. And so in summary, Deadzone is great. There's a campaign starting on the 16th of May, 2022. Mm-hmm. It's running for a month. Please get involved in that. It's really, really, really fun. And hopefully I'll have something to talk about next month regarding all that stuff. Right, let's move on to... And I admit we've jumped around quite a lot. But let's move on to now. So we're going to talk about Mantic fantasy games now. So Mantic fantasy. So when we say fantasy, Clem, we mean... obviously Kings of War and Kings of War Vanguard and Armada.
Yeah.
Is that everything?
Pretty much. I think that's it. Obviously the big guy, and also for our interest is Kings of War. I mean, maybe we can start with Kings of War, right?
Of course we can. Yeah.
Right. So, what's up with Kings of War these days? Well, on my end, the big thing coming up is the German GT that you mentioned. So it's in a couple of weeks now, like end of May actually. And I decided for this tournament season to play Night Stalkers because I had some Night Stalkers from the Vanguard starter, like the Kickstarter actually. And oh, wait a second.
Shadows in the North, I think it was, wasn't it? With the Northern Alliance.
Yeah, so there was Northern. It's the Kickstarter, so there was Forces of the Abyss, Night Stalkers.
Right. The Vanguard thing.
Yeah, Vanguard. Yeah.
Vanguard, right.
And wait a second, the dog is going crazy. Come on. Yeah, someone is raining.
I could imagine that being a very euphemistic French expression. I can imagine that.
So
Excuse me, the dog is going crazy.
What does your dirty mind imagine when I say this?
Yeah, I try and keep it in check, but
right, family friendly.
It's not always, as you know, Clem. It's not always successful.
Family friendly. Anyway, so yeah, I've decided to play my Night Stalker army, so I've expanded it a little bit. I had a hard time coming up with the lists that I was happy with. As I mentioned, my playstyle usually is more run forward and just hit everything like a ton of brick and then die miserably. So Night Stalkers can do that to some extent. And so my list is 2 hordes of fiends. So it's a lot of attacks, not very reliable.
Hitting on 4s?
Hitting on 4s, but 24 attacks, movement 8. So that can lead to interesting things, let's say. I have a love and hate relationship with the fiends, like the model and rule-wise, but I've decided to stick to it, right? Like I bought 2 hordes of fiends. Assembling them was kind of a nightmare. Because they have
but you've
8.
done it. You're in this. You're in this now.
Yeah, I've done it, and it works. And
hitting
it
on
looks
4s.
Great. It's like a spider.
Hitting on
right?
4s is You
have 8 independent legs that you need to glue together, and it was just challenging, but it's done, and I love them, and the dog is still going crazy.
Yeah, hitting on 4s, they can be amazing, or they can just be the worst thing in the world, can't they? It's just dice be dice.
That's the thing. And the rest of the army is so obviously some scarecrows, some big monsters. So I have like a dragon, so the Void Lurker, and then I have Soulflayer cavalry. So it's kind of chaff, but they're more expensive than chaff. They can hit quite well, like maybe 12 attacks, crushing 1, thunderous charge 1. So they can do some damage. They also have Wind Blast 5, which is actually pretty interesting. It's a challenging army for me because most of the time, if I follow my gut feeling, I run forward and charge and I lose, right? Because that's not what this army can do. But it's a ton of fun. It's a nice challenge. And so, I had to finish assembling some of those fiends. I 3D printed a Portal of Despair model because there's none in the Mantic range. Finished painting all those up recently, and so now I'm about ready. I just need to play a few games to really get a hang of it. And
2,300 points, right?
Yes, exactly. It's the usual.
The new standard, the new normal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much the new normal, I think, these days, and it's 5 games. Last year, I think the level was pretty high. I mean, there were a lot of very good players, I think, but also super kind and super nice players. So it was really a fun weekend, and I'm looking forward to it.
100%. So, 100% right. Yeah, really. I'm now we're talking about it, I'm really sad I'm not going this year. So shockingly, I haven't played. So since Clash of Kings, the new book drops, I've got it. And I haven't played a single game of Kings of War. There's lots of reasons for that. Partly it's because of Deadzone, and partly my Trident Realm army, so I love my Naiads, right? I really love my Naiads. It may not be the best thing in the world. They die, very often before they can regen. And, it's, my army's got all kinds of problems. One of which is I just don't have many hammers. So quite often in games, I'm trying desperately to hold up the opposition. But I should be holding it up for a purpose. Like, okay, I'm trying to hold them up for 2 turns because in 2 turns I have this really powerful thing coming around that's going to, win me the game. So I'm holding things up, but I don't have that that reason, right? Which is stupid, but it is what it is, right? But I just love my army. It's super finessey, and I'm not, me. I'm a pretty mediocre player, really. But I just love playing it. If I do something wrong, which I often do, it's a disaster, right? I'm going to get completely destroyed because my units are really specialised. They usually do one thing really, really well. But for example, if we take the ensnarers, if you play the ensnarers properly and crucially you give your opponent a reason that, oh god, they have to charge them in the front. Ensnarers are amazing, right? If you play them incorrectly, you let them get shot, they're a disaster. If you play them, well, they don't. They're hitting on 4s. They really don't kick out many wounds, right? So if you don't actually give your opponent a reason to charge them, or you let them be charged in the flank, you're done for. So you have to get them. It's really, really important. And they've got Pathfinder. They've got lots of little tricks, but you really have to force your opponent to charge them and use them. Otherwise, they're I forget what they are now. 230 points of a unit that's not very good. So you have to use them effectively, and it's to a greater or lesser extent, it's true with all of the things in my Trident Realms army. Is they're typically really good at one thing, but they're terrible at everything else. And that is a hard play style, but I love it. Yeah. And you know me, I get it wrong more often than I get it right. But when I get it right and I win a game on purpose, it is such a sweet feeling. It really is, because do you have to earn your wins with this army.
Yes,
I'd probably give this army to a good player and they'd be smashing everyone. I'm sure it's true. But, me being mediocre and having this, it's like, but when I actually win, and normally I go 2 wins, 3 losses. That's me on a tournament, right? That's roughly where I am. I'll get a little bit of good luck in one game, a little bit of bad luck in another game. But I find that really, really fun. And it's incredibly stressful, and more things go wrong than they go right. And I learn a ton every time I lose. In the last GT, I played a very, very good Night Stalkers player called Sebastian. I think in the previous year he came 4th, and he was in the top 1 or 2 positions almost the whole way through. And then I think in the last game he just dropped down a little bit, and that was a really good, really strong year. Elliot Morrish was over from the UK. He came 2nd with his Twilight Kin, I think he brought with him. So it's really competitive. And anyway, I played Sebastian at the last GT, and in the first game, I think, and pretty much immediately thought, okay, well, I'm losing this. And the way that Sebastian goes around the game, he's very, very technically correct. The way he positions his units, the way he rotates them, he's very precise with everything. And he's also a really, really nice guy. And I actually beat Sebastian, which I couldn't believe. I absolutely couldn't believe it. And it was a really tight game. And we had a really fun time. Like any good Kings of War game, you're actually sort of trying to help your opponent a little bit. You kind of understand what they're intending to do, and you're kind of helping each other out and all the rest of it. And then having won that game, wow, what the heck just happened? I then played against a really, really nice guy who was, and without mentioning names, he was very, very late. He missed the first round because he was still incredibly drunk from the night before. Turned up with his undead with goblin allies, and I think in turn 2 I killed half his army, and we were literally saying, okay, well, the game is over. But you know how Kings of War goes, and I got a couple of, in the next 3rd and 4th round, I got some really bad luck on some dice rolls, and I couldn't quite finish him off. And there was one horde of lichens I didn't kill, And that got round, charged my Naiad heart piercers, killed 3 regiments of heart piercers. There really wasn't anything I could do about it. Well, no, I mean there was, but
I think that's what's big mistake, right?
Exactly, and that's the beauty of Kings of War is he was literally saying, okay, well, let's stop now because I feel terrible and I've definitely lost. And I was like, no, keep playing. And I ended up losing. Yeah, and that was terrible because for an hour and 20 minutes I was like, okay, I've won this one. Wow, I've won 2 games already. I can't believe it. I've hit my goal for the tournament, and then I've lost. How did I lose? That was hard to take, and if I'm honest, I still don't quite understand from the position I was in because he had 3 or 4 even regiments of like the vampire cavalry, the really scary stuff, and the Lycans. And the Moonfang, and on I think turns 2 and 3, I killed almost all of that. And I think there was a regiment of, and we're going back a couple, at least a year now. But yeah, there was a regiment of the vampire cavalry I couldn't quite kill, but I wind blasted him back behind the hill, so he couldn't charge me next turn. So I was in such total control, except for this Lycan. There was some kind of vampire hero that I never managed to kill, and that's one of the massive weaknesses of my army is it really doesn't put out many wounds. So sometimes you really just need something dead, and my army struggles. When you really, really need to kill that unit, my army struggles. But anyway, it's not valid anymore since the cock changes. I love the Worm Riders, but I think they've gone up to 260 points for the Trident Realms ones, which is yikes. That's pricey. I must admit, I mean, I've played around with lists and I've been looking at the depth horrors, and I've always shied away from the depth horrors because everyone says how amazing they are. But I might go depth horrors and Thule. I mean, Thule have got so much better, and I've got all of this stuff painted up. I can't remember how many hordes I've got. Depth horrors I've got painted. It's like 6 hordes or 5 hordes. I've got 3 regiments of the Thule painted up. So yeah, at some point. And the other thing actually with my Trident Realms is it sounds unbelievable actually, but I won a painting, best painted for the army, but I'll be honest, most of those guys at that tournament had probably already won the best painted, right? It was like, that's new and bright pink, so, let's give that the award. So even as I was given the award, I was like, guys, yeah, I mean, half the people's armies look way better than mine do. But I do want to go back and actually just, because I think if I just spend a few hours, I think the whole thing will look better than it, I can see, we were talking about that earlier about, I look at that and look at all the mistakes and go, that should be better. It wouldn't take much to make that a lot better. So that's something I definitely need to do. I mean, I'm knee deep in Firefight and Deadzone and all the rest of it, but I really want to go back up and just tidy that up. And as well, my Northern Alliance, I've got an all Mantic Northern Alliance. I think I've got there's just one model that isn't Mantic. It's like a Reaper Bones model because it was the Cavern Dweller, which I think now Mantic have a model, but at the time they didn't have a model for it. So I think I just want to go back in and make those 2 armies just look a bit nicer, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, it's I think that'll make a big difference to me playing. But we kind of touched on it earlier. Is I have friends who are happy to come over and play with my stuff, which is totally fine. I've got way more stuff than we would need. But it's like I did get a couple of friends to buy. A friend of mine bought a Mantic Abyssal Dwarf army like 2 years ago, and he's never got round to painting it. Occasionally I'll kind of say, hey buddy, how's it going? He also got the Empire of Dust fleet for Armada, but he just hasn't, for whatever reason, he just hasn't managed to get it painted, and now it's a little bit awkward that I keep kind of asking him, so I'm leaving it to him. In all honesty, if he said, Chris, and I kind of touched on this with him, look, why don't I just come over on a Saturday and we can attack it together? I can bring my airbrush. We can just spray everything black. I mean, Abyssal Dwarves, I mean, let's be honest, mix up a little bit of brown, a little bit of silver, kind of give them a dark, dry brush that over black. I mean, let's be honest, once you've done that, you're most of the way there, right? I mean, in all honesty. Exactly, right? But I can meet him halfway, but I can't do it all for him. It's got to kind of come from him, and if he shuts down about the whole thing, there's not a lot I can do about it. And it's such a shame because he's such a nice guy. He's a really good player, really, really great guy, really fun to be around. But
I mean, I think for some people, so playing is playing with unpainted stuff is the way to go. At least for starters, because then it gives you more motivation, right? Like, because if you look at just I have to paint the whole army before I even put it on the table, that's really daunting, right? Like, I think for your first army, you really need to have some sort of external motivation for it. And I think maybe playing with unpainted stuff more regularly, like, hey, why don't you assemble your models, or at least some of them, put them on multi-bases,
I think this is
and we can have games. And your stuff is not painted.
I think,
yeah, sure, bring it over. Doesn't matter.
This is
right? Like, play with your models.
This is a really interesting topic. I think we should
say
save this for another topic of the month, because I think there's a lot to go into this. I think it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, because it is true. Like, when it's your first Kings of War army, it is too much, right? I think you can't expect of someone to paint everything.
No,
in the army
but he has also got an Armada fleet that has never made it to the table, and that is more understandable than I'd expect. But also, that's cool. If he wants to play with unpainted models, he just has to build them and tell me, and that's okay. I'll do that. I like to play with painted models. But, to be a supportive friend, that's okay.
Sure, me too.
I'm willing to play 3 or 4 times with unpainted and support him in his hobby.
Yeah, I mean, what I would not like is paint against never painted models, right? But I obviously also completely understand someone who is getting into it, has played maybe a couple demo games, just bought some models because I thought, that's a great system, and then when they sit on their hobby table at home and they look at the hundreds, like 100 models that they need to paint before the army is fully done, it is daunting, right? And so I think if you play some games and maybe help them, like, I don't know, like paint a hero that they like, or paint a test regiment, like or a few test models for a regiment, and then at least of the full regiments, there are a couple of them that are painted that show, okay, that's how they look on the table. I think that's a good starting point, and it's a good strategy. But I think in the end, I really like playing a lot, and so I'm happy with playing against unpainted model if that's what it takes to get a good.
Yeah, so I think this is definitely a topic for another one, because I think this is really interesting, and it's something I don't think we've kind of got a definitive answer to, but I think we should come back to this. So Kings of War. So for next month, Clem, you'll be doing a section on your experiences of the tournament. I'm sure you could talk us through your games, what went right, what went wrong. Right. I'm super looking forward to that, and I will. Absolutely. When you explain, I will be very jealous, and really sorry I didn't get Hamburg. Yeah, to be quite honest. Yeah. And next up, I think, are you working on your ogre army next?
Yeah, so I think, but that will come probably after our next episode, because now obviously I'm still in Night Stalker mindset. But the next things that I have in mind, or that I'm already thinking about for the future, is my ogre army. It's almost done, like a good chunk of it is painted, but I resisted it for a while. But now I think I really need 2 hordes of siege breakers. I don't like the official resin bits for it, so I will 3D print some that Nick Williams has designed.
Is that the models or the bases, or both?
Yeah.
Are you talking about 3D printing the models?
No, I will I just want to 3D print some bits to transform normal ogre warriors into siege breakers. So it's basically just a nice shield, a nice helmet, and boom, right? Like maybe a hammer or something. And that's basically what the official kit is doing. But for some reason, I don't like the official kit. And I thought, that's cool. I'll try a different approach for it. So that's one, like getting my ogre army to 2022.
Nice, yeah, compliant. I've actually got a load of Troll Blood models in the basement that I haven't done yet. That I was always planning on doing an ogre army for, but that'll be at some point. I've also got my Halflings. I've got a load of mostly Mantic, but I've also got a bit of Wargaming Atlantic stuff as well. I think I did like just 3 units, probably a year ago or so. So whenever the Halflings came out, I did 3 units and then just got sidetracked by other things. But I've still got that to do. I've still got my Varangar army, which is all sitting in boxes, which is a mix of models. Obviously, I've got a whole army of Northern Alliance, but me being me, I got a whole new army to do Varangar as well because why not? Yeah, me being me.
Yeah. I mean, I know the feeling, right? Like I have several armies in boxes.
I feel weird going. Today these clansmen are the good guys, but next week they're the bad guys. Yeah, for some reason my brain can't cope with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the ogres are one of the upcoming projects. The other one is I play Kings of War at half scale, so with 10mm miniatures from Warmaster. And I played again a couple of weekends ago, and it's just amazing. Like I really love it. It's different from 28mm, but to some extent it's better.
Let's keep this again for another monthly topic, because again this is something I really want to go into, and I have concerns over will it split the community, etc. And of course Mantic aren't making any money off that, but let's save that topic for another episode.
Right. Sure, it's just I have my second army for this to make at some point. So I have Varangos, Basilia, Twilight King, or Forces of Nature. Nice. Not sure yet which one I'm going to do, or rather in which order I'm going to do all of them. And the last thing for Kings of War I'm looking forward to is actually built 3 sets of terrain for a recent gaming day, and I need to finalize it, like paint it and so on. And I also want to build more tables worth of terrain because I plan to organize a gaming day, like a larger event here in Berlin. Let's say 8 tables, Kings of War, sometime this summer.
So I'm just going to jump in.
I really want to do.
I'm just going to jump in quickly and say I still need to do my Green Lady army, which you very kindly printed for me, which is the 10mm. So I've still got it. I know where it is. It's in a box. I know where the box is. It's going to happen.
Nice.
But Clem, why don't you just very briefly? Why don't you touch on? So you organised a gaming day in Berlin. It was really inclusive, right? Which is obviously something we like because we like that.
Yeah. So it was not just Kings of War. It was first and foremost a charity event for the Ukraine situation. So we decided with the local gaming group to raise some funds for a local charity that helps refugees from Ukraine here in Berlin. And we decided to invite several gaming systems for the day. And so there was Kings of War, Armada.
Is there still time to donate to that, or is it finished?
And so we had like.
Can I PayPal you just a few euros and chuck it in the pot?
So the organization we selected and gave money to still exists, and you can donate money to them, of course.
Nice, cool.
But our own donation event
is closed.
Is over now. So we raised, I think, 1,300 euros for them.
Oh, that's amazing.
We had a raffle. So our local shop donated some stuff. Some people also donated, old boxes of miniatures that they had on their collection as a raffle, and then we had raffle tickets that everyone could buy and so on, and it was actually a lot of fun. Fantastic. And we raised a decent amount of money, I think, and we also had a great time playing games, and so
amazing.
Best of everything.
Best of both worlds. Fantastic. And it was it for Mantic Games, I guess it was just Kings of War.
Kings of War and Armada, actually. Yeah, we have.
Oh, and Armada, cool. And hey, let's use that as a perfect segue. So, just let's talk a little bit about Armada now. So, very, very briefly. So, I've got a Basilean. Are we calling it Basilean? Yeah, Basilean and a Orc fleet.
Yep.
So, I guess technically I have played Orcs in another game because they were the 2 starter ones. Yep. I've built basically the starter set plus a couple of ships, and I've got kind of the separate starter fleet boxes to do as well because they were going cheap. So I've got plenty to get on with. I really like the game, and a friend of mine who comes over and plays my stuff but doesn't have the bandwidth to actually kind of get into the hobby himself. But he really likes playing with me. He really enjoys it. So Armada's a cool game.
It is a fun game. Like it has different mechanics from many other tabletop systems, and so it's a change. It's a nice change. I'm not in general a big fan of boats and stuff, but I like the different game mechanics, and the models are also pretty cool and pretty quick to paint, in my opinion. Mine are basically assembled and primed, and they just need to get some contrast slapped over them. So I have some Basilians from Vanguard already, and so I think I want to reuse the same paint scheme for Armada. And it's going to be fun to actually have painted models to play it at some point.
But already I'm kind of thinking, wouldn't it be cool if you had two games side by side? One was a fleet game. You had an island in the middle. Then there's a fight going on the island, and the two games, impact on each other. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's a
really
very
cool.
interesting thing. I thought a lot about this, but again, it's a topic for another time. I think it's hard to do proper narrative, like campaign or like interlinked games like this, because you want to make it fun for everyone and obviously make some battles count for the next one, but also don't make the next battle too one-sided, because if you win the first game and get advantages, then the second game you will also win it.
Is it?
And so
it's just going to be a landslide, isn't it?
Exactly, balance the flavor that you get from the interlinked games, and at the same time keep interesting games for each one of those.
I mean,
sounds pretty cool.
Yes, you're right. But I mean, if everyone has the same mentality that this is an experience, we're telling a story, and that as we roll dice, make decisions, we are telling the story. It's not so much about winning and losing. I think that's easy to say when you're not the one getting absolutely thrashed. But if you got 4 or 6 people with the same mindset that we know this isn't going to be balanced. It's a different way. We're telling the story.
It's a different way to play for sure, and it takes.
It's a different way to play.
I think for it to really work. But yeah.
Definitely, and good communication too, definitely. But I mean, that's as I get older, though, I find that more and more is that I really want to win the Kings of War games in the tournament, right? In that moment, I can't lie, I really want to. When I'm rolling the dice to try and win the game, boy, do I want to win that game. But it's not increasingly I see it's not a binary thing, right? It's like the idea that one person has won, therefore one person has enjoyed themselves. That seems so weird and unappealing to me. That if I play let's say I play Deadzone the weekend before last, and I was the nameless, and I won by quite a lot, to be honest. If my friend didn't enjoy himself, like if I didn't think he had a fun time too, I wouldn't want to do that again, because the fun I have is having fun with another person, and if I thought that they didn't enjoy themselves, I'd actually be quite upset by that.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty often, I think for Kings of War at least, sometimes I'm upset when I lose, not because of losing, but because I realize, I saw this mistake as soon as I did it.
Yeah. But that's a different thing. Exactly. That's a different thing.
But it's not like not like being a sore loser or like, oh shit, I had no idea, like I couldn't do anything because I didn't understand what the other army could do. No, I understood pretty much all the rules and everything, because I cannot hide behind, I don't have your codex anyway, so I trust whatever rule you're telling me, even if you're making shit up right now, right? In Kings of War, that's not how it goes. But
this will sound a little bit weird, Clem, but you've got enough. You win enough in your normal life without your hobby life that you don't need that. You're doing just fine.
Maybe,
you don't need the burst of self-confidence that you want a game of tabletop miniatures to validate.
I mean, it feels good when your master plan actually comes to fruition, right? Like you think, by turn 3. This unit will sneakily come here and hit him in the flank, and he will not expect that, and they will win me the game. Or just my dragon going there will threaten all of this flank where my rest of my army.
Yeah.
Like when your plan actually comes to fruition, it's amazing, right? But
Yeah,
and
100%.
sometimes okay, I know this is a mistake, but at the same time, I feel like I have to do it because I want to see what's going to happen. I mean, sometimes at least that's how I play,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
And yeah,
100%.
in the
Yeah,
end, you
yeah,
still
yeah.
lose, but you're like, oh yeah, it didn't go well, differently from what I was expecting, but still, I had the right intuition that it was a bad idea. But at
What's
least now I know
What's
this does
interesting?
not work, right?
What's interesting though that now is my brain. It's definitely changed, right, fairly recently. So let's say, Doctor Coigneur or whatever he's called, like let's say my Deadzone strike team leader gets killed by a grunt, like unexpectedly gets killed by just some basic, peasant guy. Um, Instantly I think, what does this mean for the story? Like,
Right.
what just happened? Like, how do we, how are we telling the story? Because it feels like, Game of Dead Zone, it feels like we are just telling a cool sci-fi story
Yeah.
as we're playing. It's like this is like a violent Saturday morning cartoon from the 1980s,
Right.
and I love that about it. Cool. So just moving things on, because we're not really talking about Armada anymore anyway. So I think we agree Armada is a cool game and it has its place. The Salamanders and the Varangar fleets look cool. I'm happy I have Armada. I have the stuff and I will play it. I don't know how many. I don't know, how much legs it's got. I hope it goes on and on and on. But I'd be interested to see how many future fleets. I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on how well they're selling. It seems to be doing pretty well as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think it is doing pretty well.
Yeah. So I hope it keeps on going, and I'd be interested to play that from time to time. But again, just from Mantic games, there are so many awesome games going on. So I just wanted to touch briefly on The Walking Dead. It finished fairly recently. I'm sad to see it go. I've invested pretty heavily over the years in The Walking Dead. I love the comic, and I did love the TV show as well. They're quite different, but I did enjoy that very much. I think it's a really good game. It was kind of one of the first games I was aware of that had kind of multiple ways to play, and I really, really like that about it, that you can play with a friend. I tend to play it with it as a very sort of flexible RPG kind of, we tend to kind of skew the game. So I'll play with my friend and we'll be the survivors, and we'll have, we might have other gangs turning up with, the very basic kind of programming AI stuff rules, which they work absolutely fine. Why make things complicated? And we, as things happen, we kind of a little bit kind of think we kind of do what feels right and what feels thematic. Do you know what I mean? It's not cheating because we're just telling a story.
Yeah,
it's like
it's a different gaming experience. I see what you mean.
It's a different gaming experience, exactly, and it's really fun. I really, really enjoy it. I've ordered the last. So I haven't got absolutely everything, but I've got loads of stuff from each wave. And I think Mantic did like half price a couple of times, and every time they've done that, I've cleaned up. And I've just got hopefully on the way soon. I've got the Whisperers and the Kingdom, which are very different factions. I think that they're resin as well, so it's cool. I'm kind of happy it's a closed system now. I've also got a load of the terrain and everything. I've got the prison, I've got the Green Family farm, and I'm really happy it's a closed system. It's balanced, and as far as I can tell, as much as I need it to be, I'm just happy to have it. And every now and again, it'll make an appearance on the table, and I love the idea of playing through. Like, I've got all the comics, as PDF. So I've got this crazy idea to read a comic and then play 3 or 4 link games based on the story we just had.
Nice.
That kind of thing. I've kind of always had an idea of doing that. Still haven't got around to doing it, and there's so much other Mantic goodness. But I'm glad I have all the stuff, and at some point I'll be doing
That's
that.
the beauty of tabletop games, right? Like, even if it's not like a video game where they shut down the server and now you're right. Like, the game is over,
Exactly.
and hope you had a good time, and that's it. Now, well, you still have the miniatures, you have the rule books, you have everything, and it's in a stable state. And in 20 years from now, you could still play it if you wanted to, right? So, I think formatting it's perfect.
Exactly.
But, you can always use
Exactly.
other miniatures, maybe if you're not against proxying. Foreshadowing. But you have the books, you have all the rules, you have tons of models already, and so now it's your game, right? So you can do whatever you want with it, even if the manufacturer decides,
100%.
okay, now we don't have the license anymore, or we decided, okay, we're done with this game, and we move on. Well, fine, do what you want. I'll keep doing what I want. So I think that's a good
100%.
advantage.
Yeah, and I think it's having the maturity to realise that as well. I think because you can be upset, and maybe rightly so. When people, for example, it seemed like when GW, for example, when Voldemort, when they stopped fantasy, they literally blew the world up. And I don't really want to go into detail now, but that felt almost like they were trolling their own players and their own customers to a certain extent. So just having a closed system and knowing I'm not going to have to keep buying models for it, that's really cool. I've got loads of stuff to play, and it's just a question of enjoying the kind of the box of toys I have now, right? Cool. So Star Saga, don't have anything particularly to mention regarding Star Saga. I own it and it's cool. Hellboy, I backed the recent Kickstarter, and also I'm waiting for my RPG book to come. I've got a load of Hellboy stuff. It's a really cool game, and I really like the comics. It's really sort of Lovecraftian cosmic horror. It's much darker than you think it might be. It's really, really good and interesting. I'd recommend anyone reading the Hellboy comics. There's some omnibuses or something like that, which are inexpensive and very good. The first two are excellent. Umbrella Academy, that was a Kickstarter from a little while ago. I was close to backing it and then thought, look, Chris, you have literally expansions and expansions of Hellboy that you haven't even looked at yet. Don't buy this other massive hobby commitment on top of everything else.
In general, I'm not a big fan of licensed games. I don't know, even if they are for universes that I like. I mean, it's a personal opinion, obviously, but I have the impression that it kind of limits my imagination toward the universe. Like for me, Kings of War is completely open, like the world is quite open. Of course, there's like novels
I 100%
and
understand.
stories
I
and so
100%
on.
understand.
But
yeah.
if I decide this is how I want my Forces of the Abyss to look like, well, no one is going to say, no, but in the movie or in the book they're different, right? And so I have the impression when you do like Hellboy stuff, I mean, there's a very dense existing corpus of artwork. Like, would you paint Hellboy like green? Probably not, right? Like he's red. That's the extent of what I know about the whole universe.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and even if it's just you, I know there is that feeling that you're doing this wrong somehow. I
see what I mean?
Get what you're saying, and as you're playing the game, even let's say The Walking Dead, for example, you say, well, Rick wouldn't have done that. It's like, but my character, Jerky McJerkface, the Varangur, I know exactly how Jerky McJerkface would behave, and that's up to me. That's my thing. That's my cross to bear. I really get what you mean by that.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not for me. But that's about it. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us on to the topic of the month. Clem, how do you feel about proxy models? And let me just give a little preamble before I come back and actually ask you that question again. So when I gave the first Deadzone demo at a local shop, there was a guy that came in and he just wanted to play with his Craft World Eldar models. They were beautifully painted, but he had absolutely no interest in getting Mantic ones. And now... I feel I probably have complicated feelings about this, but from a Deadzone perspective, to play the game with Mantic models, you have to spend about €30. And I know €30 is not nothing, but to me that sounds like, for a tabletop game, that sounds like an extremely reasonable amount of money to put down. And I just found that a little bit strange to some extent. How do you feel about that?
So I do use proxy models every now and then.
And I have to say I do as well.
Obviously, when, for example, one profile in the game is not covered by the manufacturer, then you either don't use that rules
have no
or
choice.
use a proxy,
Yeah.
right? Although, like Games Workshop, for example, doesn't do that anymore. Like any rule you get from them has a model that you can buy from them, and there's no like they don't give you rules for stuff that you would kit bash yourself or something, which is a bit sad in my opinion.
No.
And so I like proxying when basically.
It's what happens when you have shareholders. Man.
Right?
That's it.
It makes sense.
It is what it is. If you've got shareholders, that's what you're doing.
I'm not criticizing it. It makes sense from their perspective. It's just I find it sad, and so I like proxying when it's kind of giving you creativity, freedom somehow. The other obvious element is whenever you want to try something new or something different, and you don't yet have the models, or you don't even know if you want to get the models for it. And then at that point, obviously, proxying makes a lot of sense. So if you take the example of Firefight, for example, so the first game that I played was with my Chin Silicult. So every single model was a proxy. And I think it worked great. I mean, I could see what the game is about. And to some extent, I'm pretty sure I could have just kept going with those models and play Firefight with those models. Except I also like the Plague models a lot. And so I thought, you know what, I already have some Plague models. I'm going to expand this army and make it like a different, similar army, but a different style and so on. And it will be very specific for Firefight. Although I could play my Plague models in Grimdark Future as well. So I will proxy those models into something else. And so when proxying is giving you freedom, I think it's a good thing. On the other hand,
I think you've just hit it on the nail on the head. There is you use proxies to know whether you like to game as a way in. So if we look back at Kings of War, which is very famous for proxies, it's a really smart thing for Mantic to do as a young company, particularly when the old world blows up, to say, hey guys, you can just take your fantasy army and plug that straight into Kings of War, and we've set it all up so you can just come and play our rule set. To get new players in and build a community, that's fantastic. But of course, at some point, Mantic needs that revenue, right?
Yeah.
It needs players to be giving them some money, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, I feel my honest opinion is that if we play a Mantic game, I think we owe them one full Mantic army. So I'd have no problem, having, I've got proxy, I've got models from other manufacturers for most of my factions of Kings of War. Most of them it's a mix, but I have my Northern Alliance is all I've got I don't know 3,500 points or something. Me, I get all the toys, but that is all Mantic, and I feel like that is fair. That I'm if not everything I buy is Mantic, but I feel like that is kind of a fair, bar to set myself, that I'm supporting Mantic with the great games they're making. Does that make sense?
In a way, yes. I mean, I have to admit, when we went to Clash of Kings last year, I was honestly half shocked, half sad to see maybe 1/3 of the armies, probably just 1/4 of the armies.
It wasn't even that, buddy.
Mantic armies.
Yeah.
I think that part was a bit weird to me. I don't know. I think
agreed.
That's one element that sometimes can make me a bit sad with proxying, is if you proxy your army with, how can I say this nicely? Like really, I couldn't find a nice way to say it. Like, like I don't know, like super cheap, not just money wise, but like cheap looking, like low effort.
To me, it's the low effort more than the money spent.
Yeah.
Because we're all in different situations with that. You don't know what people have got going on in their lives. But if it's obvious they've made
so
no
I think
effort,
that's where it might be an issue for me. So it's not just proxying at that point, right? It's also painting models. Obviously, I don't expect any kind of great painting skills from anyone, but I feel like if you'll never ever paint any models, then I think you're missing out on a big part of the hobby. And of course, you do you. I mean, if that's how you want to play your games, or for whatever reason you don't have time to paint them, or whatever it is, well, that's your decision. But for me, at least, I think it's a bit sad. And I would say just just.
But also it does. We can't pretend it doesn't impact the other player, though, right? So if you're playing on a beautiful table with the other player has beautiful models, and you rock up with, let's say just a cheap and nasty dollar store toy soldiers, blue tack two bits of wood. That does have a negative impact on another person who has gone to a lot of trouble to make sure their stuff looks nice. True. So that is also
for me,
thing.
it's true. It kind of robs me of the joy of seeing two beautifully assembled and painted armies on the table.
Exactly.
So that part is a bit sad. I can understand when it's still a work in progress, or that's I just bought the army, or hey, that's my first army, or whatever it is. It's just
I'm just trying the game out. It's my first tournament. That's cool.
Obviously, I have no issue with that, and completely fair. It becomes a bit more worrisome when some players you will see will always have a grey army, but it's never the same grey army, right? You know the type, and so in that case, it's like that's your way to play this, but I think it's a bit sad. To get back to the proxy model stuff, I think I agree with you to some extent that if you really enjoy playing the Mantic games, then why not just get Mantic models that go with it? I think it's a bit.
And as well, if Mantic are going to treat us like adults, because if you went to and I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure, if you went to an Infinity tournament and you had proxies, I think the players themselves, let alone the company, would be uncomfortable. I know if you go to a GW tournament, there's no way you could play with Mantic models, for example. They'd be, they're very expressly, you have to use the model as described.
They're shareholders, right? So for GW, it's really a shareholder thing. But
Yeah. But Mantic, because Mantic are nice about it, I feel like as players, I say this at work all the time, behave like adults and I'll treat you like an adult. It's the same thing, right? It's that I feel like we have some responsibility to give Mantic a bit of money and just make sure that we're supporting the company and not just playing the game.
For me at least, it's 100% okay if your first army is proxy, right? Like you have zero Mantic models, but sure, come and play Mantic games because you'll see how awesome they are. And so, sure, bring your GW models or your whatever 3D printed models or your whichever other faction or manufacturer models you have, and try out the rules. And once you're in the universe and in those rules, in my opinion, it's very easy to find one of the armies or one of the factions that you actually like the models, and like Mantic models, and give it a try. And I think it's a smart way to support the company that you like, and making sure that they will still be around in a few years. And I think I wouldn't call it a moral obligation, but I think it's a smart decision as a player, right? Because if you say, okay, I love GW models and they are amazing models, and that's true. I mean, I still buy GW models. I don't play any one of their games. Well, Necromunda, that's difference maybe. But I still buy some of their models, but I sure hope to God that they are not the only people writing rules for our games, right? And so
100%.
I'm happy 100%. to get Mantic models. And again, I don't buy them like, I whip myself in the back, like, I have to be a good boy and buy Mantic models to support them. No, they also make great models. It's just I select the ones that I like, and then I buy those ones. And I think it makes complete sense.
Yeah. But also you've got the beauty with Mantic of if you buy the models you think are cool, you can be confident that they'll be competitive in the game.
Yeah, it's not like some models just have no point of putting on the table. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and even chess, right? Even chess is not perfectly balanced. One player gets to go first, right? So even chess is not perfectly balanced. So I think the idea of perfect balance is probably actually unhelpful. there are, let's say Kings of War, we know there are tiers of which armies are better. But typically it's kind of like, for example, undead. They are, they're really strong, but also they have loads of different options.
Yeah.
And the same with abyssal dwarves as well, right? Like, they're good, but also that you can build the army in loads of different ways, which are really, really strong. Whereas, for example, the herd, they're really good at punching in the face, but if you try to build the list a different way, you'd struggle.
I think it's pretty good, right? Like, each army has a different type and can do different things. I think for me the key element is a better Kings of War player will win more often than a bad one. And there's no...
Me too. Luck plays a part, but it's mostly strategy on the table rather than anything else.
There's no way to buy like the latest book or the latest army, and because you've invested more money into the game than someone else, then you will beat them. This is not how this game works. And for me, this is very important.
Exactly. You've bought the latest boxes and models. Yeah, 100%.
So,
100%. Yeah.
And so again, proxying, I think, also can be pretty nice when it just lets you, I don't know, like you love a different range, for example, like not a Mantic range of models, but you don't really want to play those rules, or you want to play them in a game that you actually enjoy, and fine, just proxy it. And then like I have some undeads for Mantic, for example, for Kings of War, and I don't think there is a single Mantic model in there. I think there are like GW models, there are Oathmark models, 3D printed models. Oh no, that's not true. There are some Dungeon Saga models in there. But, and that's like, okay, well, I just wanted to do a different hobby project. This is my vision from a hobby perspective of what I wanted for my undead army. Almost no Mantic models in there, and then yes, I'm proxying. But I'm happy with that. I mean, I have 3 full Mantic armies already. I think I can afford doing one that is proxying, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I think maybe if we just keep it at the back of our minds a little bit, that Mantic have got bills to pay, and we enjoy this game. I completely agree with you. Yeah, totally. Cool. Okay, I think we talked about Mantic stuff for long enough for this episode, Clem. So what can we say? Let's go first. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's sum up in terms of what can people expect for next month. So you're going to the Germany GT, which I'm already very jealous about, with your Night Stalkers. So I'm sure you're going to talk us through some games regarding that, and just your general experience. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about it and seeing some photos of some beautiful armies. I'm doing my demo tomorrow and hopefully doing some Deadzone campaign stuff, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I'll probably also have my first game of Firefight, which I'm very much looking forward to, against some enforcers. And and on the topic, just to finish off then, the topic we were talking about proxies. I think you've made some really, really good points about that. I mean, for example, I've got the iron. I forget, are they Iron Warriors or Steel Warriors? The basic dwarf Forgefather dudes with guns. The shooty guys normally got guns. I bought I've got the Mega Army. I've got the official Mantic ones. They're okay. I don't love the models. I found some really nice 3D sculpts which were more minery, so they kind of fit my kind of more Brocker Artificer theme more. And so I've got 30 of those painted up. So I do it. I mean, I kind of feel like, well, in that situation, I've also bought the official Mantic model, so it's I feel like it's an addition rather than Anyway, do you see what I'm getting at? No. I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, I think that's again, it's a question of if you have a different artistic expectation somehow, or there's a special model that you really like, or that fits your expectation better, then I think it's fine to use it. And I think the issue for me with proxy models is when there's kind of a sign of disrespect in one way or another.
Yeah.
And so if it's like disrespect of your opponent or of the company that is making stuff.
100%. So I'm super, super looking forward to hearing how you get on at the GT. Obviously, have a lot of fun. You were just starting to get really good with your Abyssal, so I'm really interested to see how you get on with Night Stalkers. Fantastic, and I'll have some Deadzone and Firefight to talk about next month. We know the audio quality is not great, and that's something we're looking at doing. If anyone has any feedback for us, we have an email address, which is manticuniversepodcast@gmail.com. Please feel free to send us some feedback, because let's be honest, we're making this up as we go, and any feedback is much appreciated. Is there anything you'd like to hear? Is there anything you wouldn't like to hear? Feedback is always a good thing, and we look forward to hearing from people. If we actually get some questions, we could actually do a question section. That would be a cool thing to do at the end. So yeah, send us your questions, which is something I've just wildcarded into the episode. But anyway, Clem, thanks so much for your time. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you about all things Mantic and Mantic Universe. So, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Corvus Terrain, who did a fantastic Deadzone, but it would work for any kind of sci-fi game. Kickstarter, check out Corvus Terrain. They are fantastic. I've got a load of their stuff for Walking Dead. They've got this great little donut shop. I think on Thingiverse they've got a free sample you can print out, which is like a contemporary shop. They print really nicely, and I'm just really, really happy with that. So I'm super excited to get their new Kickstarter stuff, which is all sci-fi spaceport themed. It is designed with Deadzone in mind, so I know it's going to line up really beautifully with the cube system, and it's going to look super, super cool. So that's very exciting. And they do other stuff, as I said, so please check them out for your 3D printing terrain. Much recommended. And I just want to mention as well that our theme song for this week is Null Sleep Galaxy Tonight, and that was sourced through the Free Music Archive. If anyone listening wants to go to the trouble of recording us a theme song, please feel free to send it in and contact us at our email address, which was again manticuniversepodcast@gmail.com. And thank you ever so much for everyone who downloaded the podcast. Please subscribe if you're interested, and tell your friends about it, and your mum, and just anyone you happen to meet, including the postman. Cool. Okay, we're finished.